Hey everybody, welcome to Movies Worth Talking About, where we talk and talk and talk about movies.
Yeah.
I I'm John Carlos, and I am joined by
Ta-da!
here to talk about Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just say up front, not about the movie itself, but just in the tenure of our friendship, I mostly know what you're gonna like and not like, especially on the show. I feel like 80% of the time, if you haven't seen it, I'm right. Like Killer Clowns, Return of the Living Dead,
Yeah.
you're gonna like this, and then you're like, oh, I fucking really like this. I go, great.
Right.
Every once in a while, I am wrong. I thought when we were gonna watch Phantasm, I'm like, oh, fuck, Eddie's gonna be like, what the fuck is this? And then you
Yeah.
went fucking in on Phantasm.
Fuck yeah.
I thought you were gonna join me and go in on Slumber Party Massacre 2. No.
No, not
So,
two.
yeah.
The first one,
My
totally.
my prediction is this, and I don't know if I'm gonna be right or not. But in the binary of like liked it or didn't like it, I have a feeling you didn't vibe on this.
You're not wrong. Um
I'm so alone in this, Eddie.
okay, this is what it's good though, because it's worth talking about. Because I really wanted to ask you, what's up? Like
Uh,
like why? Why? What tell me.
okay. I don't even know where to start. But I'm gonna guess. By the way, I'm just gonna guess that as far as the characters and like their actions is probably what lost you. Probably with this movie, I'm guessing.
We'll get into it. That's part of it. That's part of it,
I
right?
mean, that's okay. So let's do the history of things.
Okay.
You and I, we saw Blair Witch, loved
Yeah.
it, but you and I don't ever really talk about it too. But you also have only seen like parts of this movie, so
Yeah, I had never seen it from beginning to end.
it's never come up with us.
Hmm.
But I saw it in theaters. I think I saw it opening weekend because I don't know if obsessed is the right word, but like fuck was I into Blair Witch.
Right.
So like, yeah, let's do two. Um, and I was into it. I actually saw it twice in theaters. And I bought it on DVD and I watched the ever loving shit out of it. And for a long, at least upon the initial release,
Hmm.
um, I don't think we had this term yet, but I feel like I don't know which is it millennials where they're just like, oh, it's a vibe. But like when I watched this movie and I was like 19 and 20, I'm like, why do I like it? It's just a vibe. Like,
Okay.
and that's the big draw for me. But also upon like second and third viewing, I started really respecting the choices, which we will probably get to. And
Yeah.
then as the years went by, um, it's not entirely that I just respect the choices like in the moment, but like in hindsight, I really dig on a lot of the. I won't call it a perfect movie, and I'm not going to sit here and try to convince you or anyone that it is a good movie. But I will tell you all the reasons why I like it, and
Right.
then
Right. Right.
yeah. Um, but yeah, just starting off, okay, because there's the movie that okay, here's my weird relationship with the movie. There's the movie that we got
Yes.
that when I'm 20, I'm vibing on,
Okay.
and then really starting to dig into. And then there's this thing that I can do, which is I am very aware of what the director wanted, and then all the
Yeah.
compromises that had to be made.
Um.
So when I watch the movie, I can literally watch it as two movies at once. I can
Hmm.
watch the movie that we get, and I can also just ignore the scenes that were being put in against his wishes, and I can watch the movie he's trying to make.
Yeah.
Because I'm
Okay.
I'm passionate enough about because I listened to his commentary like fucking 20 years ago, but
Mm.
he talks very much about like, oh, I didn't want that in there, didn't want that in here, this is what I was going for, and I carry all that in my head, and I
Right.
just am constantly omitting the bullshit. So I watched two
Hmm.
movies and I like both of them, and I know I'm not a total weirdo for thinking that way. One of my dearest friends, uh, he's been on the show, BJ.
Yeah.
He loves Star Trek 5. which is considered by many to be the worst. But there's a version of Star Trek V they were trying to make, and then the version of Star Trek V we got, and he can watch Star Trek V go like he can edit the movie real time in his head, and I do the same thing with Blair Witch. So we can get into all that, but well, I guess we'll just get into it now.
Yeah.
So why do I like this? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, first and foremost, I hesitate to call this one a big swing, but you know how I like big swings.
Yeah.
But I respect the okay. You have a movie that's a hit. It's a hit for being a documentary.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to get like all Ryan Johnson about it, but I love that it takes everything you think a sequel to Blair Witch would be and goes, no, we're doing something else. That movie was a hit because it was a handheld fake documentary? Well, this one's shot on 35 millimeter. Right. That one took place entirely in the woods. This one takes place mostly indoors. Like at every turn that it could be the obvious sequel, it does not do the obvious thing. That might not be everyone's cup of tea, though, but I don't need, oh, we found more footage of the kids, and here's what happened to them next. Or other people go into the woods, and they get lost, and here's their found footage, which was going to be one of the sequels. When Joe Berlinger was brought in, he was presented with like 2 or 3 scripts, and he's like, these all suck. Here's what I would do.
Sure.
So much of why I like this movie isn't even just the text of the movie, but which is funny because parts of the movie are very metatextual. But when I watch this movie, I don't just take it story at face value. I'm very aware of intentions and just irony. So like meta viewing, like for example, the fact that they hired a very well-regarded documentarian, and the first thing he does is, well, I'm not going to make a fake documentary for you. Here's a real movie. I go, that's fucking awesome. Because the studio's like, we got to get someone who knows documentary shit.
Yeah.
Like Paranormal Activity 3, where they're like, let's get the Catfish guys. They've made documentaries. We got to keep this thing going. Could you imagine if like the Catfish guys came in for Paranormal 3 and then turned it into like a narrative?
That would have been interesting. Yeah.
Right. And I think this is interesting.
Yeah.
The first one, has a really, I mean, for lack of a better term, it's like a shitty looking movie. It's shot by actors and it's on 60 millimeter and like digital tape. And this movie at times is quite a nice looking movie. There's a lot of I want to hear why you don't like it, what you don't like about
it. Okay. Well, I'll start by addressing things that you've already brought up because I want to respond to those.
Let's do that.
I first off, I want to say I absolutely hear what you're saying about like watching the movie that was made while carrying like the movie that was, intended. Because I've definitely done that. I can't think of any titles off the top of my head because you can tell from the lights behind me. It's, while as we're recording, it's the path to the holidays and there's just madness. So my memory isn't completely functional. But as far as I know the feeling. I definitely have movies that I love that I would never call perfect. And that to some people I wouldn't even bother defending because who cares? I like it, you don't. That's fine. And if you want to know why I like it, I'll explain, but it probably won't make any sense. So, why waste my time? But so I totally hear that. And I will say, I wasn't watching it going like, oh my God, I fucking hate this. I could feel, again, I feel like you walk into this movie more informed than I am, which is becoming a theme with this franchise right now, because I rewatched while I was setting up and everything like that. I just had the first pod that we did for the first movie running, and I'm glad that I actually went back after seeing Book of Shadows. I went to Tubi and I rewatched Curse of the Blair Witch.
Ooh.
Yeah. I really wish I'd watched it before I'd watched Book of Shadows, because maybe there were things that I was wondering as I was watching Book of Shadows, because I had plenty of time in my head to just kind of go like, oh, I wonder, okay, I'm going to write down that name because I don't remember who that is. the people they're alluding to like in the past and stuff, and I'm like, okay, they're talking about them like they know who they are. I don't
Mhm.
remember why that name's significant, but
Oh yeah.
if I watch Curse of the Blair Witch, it's probably going to come up. So okay, I want to write down these three names in particular, and they were Eileen Treacle,
Mhm.
Rustin Parr, and fucking Ellie Kedward.
Yeah.
Because also we recorded the first movie pod months ago, so
Yeah.
we all know my memory, as previously established. So anyway, um, as I was watching it, I definitely got a sense that there were intentions, like somebody nerded out enough to include those names and to kind of like keep up with the lore, and even things that you alluded to in terms of like what you believed was happening in the first movie, I could see happening in this movie to these characters. So I'm just kind of like,
Mm.
oh, okay, like the kind of like the blackout nature of it, and it's kind of like your mind's eye is on one path while your body is doing something else. And I'm like, okay, I can see all of that, like kind of like cohesively keeping within the lore, that
Yeah.
was kind of, and again, like if you don't just watch the first movie but also watch Curse of the Blair Witch, like okay, this fits very neatly alongside all of that as far as like certain details that they bring up. um as far as you mentioned like the differences between this second movie and the first in terms of just like the media that was used and the resolution of it. I talked about, I feel like there could be a drinking game with the word resolution in the first movie pod. I feel
Yes.
like I said it over and over again. Anyway, but I feel like not just technical differences, uh because I mean that was fine. I mean I was seeing it in a clearer, a different aspect ratio, clearer resolution. It's obviously being shot on film, blah 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 blah. But I didn't need it to be a replica of the first either. I wasn't sitting there going like, God,
Mm.
I wish somebody would have just gone into the woods again and just done a found footage thing, because I thought what they were doing was interesting. Actually, it
Mm.
hooked me in the beginning, when they were treating it as though the Blair Witch Project is a movie, and it is a movie made about something that an actual town that is now having to deal with the aftermath of their town being kind of like this hotbed of activity now for people who, I saw the Blair Witch Project movie and I thought it was so cool, so let's all go to these graveyards, let's all go out camping in the woods, let's all go again. So it's treating it as if it was a movie made but still based on things that actually happened. I thought, okay, that's an interesting direction to go in. I think the problem that was the first thing that was interesting to me about it, but simultaneously I already ran into a problem because it felt like, oh, so everything I'm watching from here on out, because it's the way they put it,
Mm.
it's a fictionalized
Mm.
reenactment of things that actually happened. And I was like, so everything I'm watching is fake. And
Which is a problem. And by the way, Eddie,
yeah,
those title cards at the beginning that say that,
yeah,
not the director's idea.
of course.
Weren't supposed to be there.
Yeah, because it takes the piss out of everything that you're watching. It would have
Yep.
been so much better if I didn't have that planted in my head. Like, so we made a movie about the
Yep.
things that happened. So this is all like an account. This is like, it's like, again, if it were even if it was going to be a reenactment, I don't have a really good memory of the fourth kind.
Yeah,
I,
because
I was, no, also because I was stoned out of my brain when I
oh,
saw it,
yeah,
and
it's not good.
yeah, but I remember seeing like what was supposed to be like the found footage against like what was supposed to be the reenactment. I don't know if it would be effective at all if I watched it sober today, but because I never returned to it, I blanked out of that movie and just started like focusing on the movie theater itself because I was stoned. But anyway, but I mean, even if they did play the reenactment card, if they could have maybe just put it in a direct to DVD thing, like if they knew that's what it was going to be like from the get-go, make it another like Curse of the Blair Witch thing and do like an Unsolved Mysteries mock-up kind of thing, and that'll get me scared, because Unsolved Mysteries used to scare the shit out of me. And I will say a fatal flaw of this film for me is that, forget about the aspect ratio, forget about like the things that it doesn't like carry over. It didn't scare me once. I was not scared of anything.
Yeah, I will say this.
Yeah.
I like the shit out of this movie, but I'm not really scared by it. But I
Mm.
enjoy it.
Okay.
I like to chew on it. I like to sit in it. Um, there's one beat that scares me
What
every
is it?
time. And that scares me like, but just kind of makes my skin crawl.
Okay.
It's Tristan is calling for Steven
Mhm.
from Jeff's bedroom. And she calls him a second time. So Steven goes into the room and she's asleep. And I'm like,
Oh.
ugh. Was she calling you? Was the witch calling you? What the fuck? I don't like that at all.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, no,
Uh,
that's yeah. I'm
yeah.
glad you brought up and that you went back to watch Curse of the
Yeah.
Blair and just all the lore, because one of the things that the movie definitely doesn't shy away from is all the lore from the first movie and everything that surrounds it.
Yeah.
But also the fandom of people who are aware of that lore. And I mean, there's not very many movies in a franchise. I don't even like that this movie has a franchise, but that can make its own commentary about the first movie, its fans, the fandom, the public reception,
Right.
both in a positive and negative way. Um, yeah, it's funny that you mentioned. Okay, so all right, one strike against not this movie, but they tried to do what the first movie did, right? Which is they had like the dossier that you could buy, and then there was the Curse of the Blair Witch documentary, and it was made by the same directors. They did that again. So they made this movie, and then they added it the text at the front that says, "This is a reenactment." And then they made another TV special
Oh.
called Shadow of the Blair Witch.
Oh wow.
That's about the real Jeff Patterson.
Oh God.
And it's like a documentary news program. And they have a whole different actor who's playing the real Jeff, except whereas the first movie, like even Curse of the Blair Witch, would you agree that like all the actors in Curse of the Blair Witch feel authentic in the same way that
Totally.
in
Yes.
the Blair Witch movie feel authentic? This feels
Yes.
like
No.
it feels like, when you're in a theme park and there's like the queue and there's like the news report to seduce you into the
No.
world of the Universal attraction.
Yeah.
It feels like news reporters talking about the real Jeff Patterson and the murder case, and it's
Oh
it's not good,
no.
Eddie.
Oh, that's really sad.
But yeah, after the filming was done, you could tell that Artisan tried to steer it into, well, it's gotta feel like this really happened, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, it's funny that you mentioned Unsolved Mysteries, because they did a whole thing with
That should
the
have
real
been
Jeff.
their key focus. Like I feel like that it also it's again it's unprecedented, which makes it exciting. Like
Uh-huh.
to find out like there's not necessarily or, like there's a sequel, but it's not like a proper sequel. And the only way you can get it is at Blockbuster, like that would have been it had I mean it might have sucked, but it also might have like had the potential to actually be something like really really cool. And it sounds like the folks at Artisan weren't really concerned with that. They just kind of wanted to repeat the success. So don't fuck with the formula too much, except in ways that are really going to piss off the mainstream fans.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, because yeah, the reception for this movie wasn't that strong,
Mm,
but I was a hardcore fan of the first one, and I got just as into this one. Whereas I know maybe other
really?
people
Yeah.
might not.
But okay.
So okay, so first of all, famously,
Yes.
famously,
Yes.
let's
Yes.
talk about fuck it. Let's talk about the movie that it is, because
Yes.
I fell for what the studio did at first, which is we open on a Marilyn Manson song,
Mm.
which I think had dropped on the radio about 3 or 4 weeks before the movie came out, and I'm like, I'm digging on this. We didn't know what a piece of shit he was back then.
Right. It really
Um,
bummed me out to see it now. Like
yeah, it hurts a little bit.
yeah.
But everything that the movie does, because what they added to the movie undoes the director's intent for what the journey is supposed to be. But
Mm.
you're showing me like, a little hand falling on the ground and a person getting stabbed. And I'm like, ooh, it's horror. It's Manson. And And it just kind of pulled me into this backstory with these flashbacks of Jeff in the asylum, and I'm like, all right. And then the rest of the movie kind of unfolds the way it does. So I mean, I don't have as a fan, I really dug where the story went, but what I'm really gonna get to now is the fact that the studio had like 2 or 3 major things that they fucked with the movie, and a few minor ones. One, they insisted on, because the original movie had no the sequence where we see them go off and murder the other campers, which is also flashed throughout the movie.
Yeah.
None of that was in the original movie.
Oh.
Jeff in the asylum,
Yeah.
and all the flashes to him were never in the movie.
Oh wow.
And the sprinkling of the interrogation scene that we have at the end of the movie throughout the movie, that was all at the end. So originally what you had was a movie about fans who go into the woods, and I wouldn't call it lighthearted, but it's, they're having fun, they're smoking weed, they're drinking, they're joking. Shit goes sour, they go to his house, they can't find the footage, they all kind of spiral into a downward spiral, culminating in some tragedy.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the movie, we find out about the tapes, but there is a linear course the movie was supposed to take. But by showing you murders up front, you already know like spooky shit's going to happen. Whereas they're like, no, we want you to just have fun with these characters, and we're just going to have fun, and then evil will befall them and you, the viewer. Instead, we're constantly telling you up front, murder's going to happen, but also like they get caught, and they're going to get interrogated. Like,
right.
Taking all the piss out of any of that.
Yep, I agree.
Which really, really, really blows.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. And
it's one thing to make him shoot, murder, because technically it would have been a goreless movie, aside from like the photos of them, of the coffin rock pentagram, and even that's just a photo and some wet stuff on bellies. But it's another thing to take footage from an 8-minute ending and now make it like a 6-minute ending, because you're now interspersing it and fucking with the whole structure of the journey.
Also, I mean, again, not knowing like what was put in against the director's wishes, it probably affected it a lot. Because one thing that I noticed, like, first off, and the whole time with Jeff, because that was another thing that I was just kind of pissed off about, because the second I saw Kim on screen, I was like, I already like this vibe that I'm getting off of this character. I'm gonna keep an eye on her. I feel like she's my way in. Okay, awesome. And who is she? Because I was
director.
because I was watching it on Tubi. There were commercials, so I could like pick up my phone and go to IMDb like while I'm waiting for the fucking commercial to pass like a cloud over the sun.
And you saw that she's like in every Spike Lee movie for like the last 20 years.
Right, I saw that. But what I really saw and noticed was, all of these kids that we're following, or kids, whatever, that we're following, they have a name that is either their name, that's the character name, or adjacent enough that is like that. And I was just kind of like, oh, because like you did that in the first movie. Okay.
But stupider in this one.
Stupider in this one because there's no reason for it. There's legitimately no reason for it, because you're not trying to fool anybody about anything, because it's not a found footage, and because we already know about, and even people who still might have not gotten the memo that the first movie is not a documentary are going to walk in and see that, well, you said it's a reenactment, and even if they didn't read that, even if they came in late, they're watching a movie that is shot like with a crew and with a set that has been like designed in multiple camera angles. So clearly it's a film. It's not, the found footage of, before that was even a genre. Like, I mean,
I'm glad.
Go ahead.
I'm glad you didn't like that, because that's another thing that's beyond the director's control, which was they'd already filmed the whole fucking movie. And then like in post, they're like, because he thought Josh Leonard played Josh Leonard. So in this movie, just to keep it with the same thing, you know, Jeff Donovan will play
Mhm.
Jeff Donovan. Erica Learson will play Erica Learson.
Hmm.
And then the studio was like, we got to change their names because you know it's like a movie. He's like, I can't. They say their first names way too much for us to cheat that in ADR. He's like, we can change their last names. I can give you that, but he's like, there's no way. So they did, and I've never really paid attention, but I presume when they're calling like
Yeah,
Erica's dad, it's pretty easy to loop Gearson to Learson.
sure.
But yeah, that was the studio's idea, and I think it's an extension of, well, now this is a movie that's filmed based on real events. So, and then I think, and I think the director even said, you're just actually you're trying to do something, but you're actually making it worse.
Yeah.
And I would agree because now I have to accept that you cast an actor named Jeffrey to play an actor named Jeffrey, and you
Yeah.
found an actress named Erica Learson to play an Erica Gearson. This is stupid. This is really dumb. Please don't do this. Oh, you did it. But yeah, they cast
Yeah.
5 people to all play the name. It's so bad.
No, and even and in all honesty, like with Jeff, like I'm familiar with the actor, but I wasn't familiar with his name, so I didn't catch that at first. But for the long time, on all my notes, I just call him Burn Notice because that's who he
Yeah.
is. Because yeah, really, really hot on that show. But okay, so that was another thing that now that I know that like all that asylum stuff like was against like the director's wishes, that makes me even sadder because it was another thing that I was just kind of like, what a horrible kind of like misguided attempt. Because immediately when I was watching, particularly the moment where he's laying on, I guess, a gurney
Uh-huh.
and they're doing the food tube like down his throat and everything like that. And then they just kind of like start pouring whatever it is, like whatever kind of substance he's, to keep him alive and everything like that. um i'm I'm watching it happen and I'm watching his reaction, and it's interesting enough that I'm like watching his reaction like his, like because he's swallowing it or something and he's awake, which is kind of like gross, and probably really uncomfortable. So I'm in it with that. But immediately my mind went to The Exorcist and went
Uh-huh.
to Linda Blair having that thing when they're like,
Uh-huh.
putting the, yeah, exactly, which is that there for that reason to and also to disarm you, to get you to believe that what you're seeing on screen is actually happening. And that was always William Friedkin's big like, oh yeah, like I've
Mhm.
got them, because people would be wincing and going when she's going and everything like that, and you're like, oh, blood, 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 a little bit of blood coming up, because that's what I assumed that's what it would do. With this one I'm watching, but the problem is I too much of what preceded and what followed went against everything that that moment was attempting to do and succeeded with in The Exorcist, because it was all to create, ironically enough, a documentary feel. In this movie, because what follows is the disposable teens over the opening credits thing, so it takes me right out of any kind of like even documentary feel cinematically that you can get from this theatrical release, because it is so largely presentational and so kind of like, yeah, we're watching a horror movie, bitches. So, and also, I mean, it just didn't work. And yeah, because nothing prior to that, the most interesting, the most effective thing that they had already kind of done, the card they played that I found, was using the Kurt Loder on MTV News footage, and Conan O'Brien, and Tonight Show with Jay Leno, and even E! News, Siskel and Ebert, like talking about the film. And I was just kind of like, that like I said, that worked on me. I was like, oh, that's interesting. All right, let's see what they do with this. And then they try to do something else that I'm just like, okay, and now you've just got like cylinders firing in multiple directions. It's not like you're trying to hit a bullseye anymore. It's just kind of like you're doing buckshot and just trying to hit whatever you can. And and so that was another thing that like kind of like bothered me, because I felt an allusion to a better film. And again, like just I was just kind of like, uh-oh. That was the first kind of like uh-oh moment for me. But I wrote Burkittsville, Maryland, prior to the burn notice moment. Burn notice getting his tube. Burkittsville, Maryland, the impact on a world in reality after the reality of filmmakers making the horror movie, the Blair Witch Project. And that was enough. It was
Mm.
so meta that I was just kind of like, I'm on the ride. And it lasted, what, 2 minutes, 3 minutes?
Ah, shit. And I can't help but wonder if you would have gone on the ride more. Because also I gave you the three biggest changes, but there's little changes like the movie never opened with disposable teens over the credits. It opened with Sinatra's Witchcraft, which already lets you know, like, we're starting with something light. We're kind of having fun with
Right.
reaction to the movie. And so
Yeah.
imagine the interview with the citizens going into not asylum, but just the trees and
Right. Huh.
there's fan edits out there, and I've
Oh.
never watched the entire movie, but I have watched the opening interviews go into the credits, and it really fucking works.
Yeah.
Like, it works so good.
I can feel myself probably chuckling
I
at
wonder if
that
you
and
would have
feeling
gone
like,
on the ride
okay.
more, at least. If, I mean, who's to say what happens with the rest of the movie, but at least the credits into the van and meeting these kids and finding out what their intentions are, and then going into the woods. And
Well,
I just have to wonder.
that was another thing because again, like I didn't know at the time like what the director wanted in and didn't want in, but that was another thing, like the introduction of the kids themselves, like in the van and everything like that, felt very tropey. Whereas the first time I saw the first movie, nothing felt tropey. I mean, the first movie was creating things that now feel like tropes, which we established in the first pod when we were discussing the first movie. This one, I know that that's not the case. This is a trope of introducing the kids in the van and everything like that with their kind of quips, and they're just kind of like leaning over a seat and go, saying something that's significant about their character that we can carry
Yeah.
through the rest of the movie with them. It'd be like if we want to like expose something like kind of vital about our personalities. So it's just kind of like, I mean, we are Ravenclaws, right? Be like, dude, I'm not even, I don't even follow J.K. Rowling anymore. It's like, neither do I. I don't know, something like that. Like, who does?
It's not a perfect movie.
And I know.
Erica popping up, it does feel very expository.
Yeah.
I love Kim, but Kim calls people out on stuff with her psychic powers in a way that I don't think any polite person would ever be like, you're pregnant, right? And you want to keep the baby, but you don't. Hey, Jeff, they never should let you out. You're not sane. You're like, who the fuck?
Well,
Get it.
but even her performance kind of actually even like helps me along with that. Like she was my MVP in this movie. So
me too.
okay, cool.
Long time. This instantly, like, once this movie came out, I have been a 22-year fan. It was great.
Cool.
However, I still though, this isn't a bad thing. It's just a thing. But some of the dialogue is very expository.
Totally.
Like you've mentioned with Erica, or when Tristan and Steven are talking about the fact versus fiction again, and like the nature of perception, reality, and I'm like, this is what the book you're writing is about. But I feel like you would have had this conversation months and months or years ago, and not right now on the campground in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
But you're having it for us. But I don't believe that you're having this conversation for you.
Not at all. And
it's all to get us caught up on, this is his point of view, this is her point of view, this is their dynamic, and I go, okay, thanks movie for,
But it also doesn't help that so early on we find ourselves in a cemetery to gather Kim, which is great, but and it immediately like evokes memories of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the first one, the original, and I'm just kind of like, but that felt natural. That felt like, I didn't have all those tropes. Those tropes actually kind of feel more Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the reboot from 2003, where people are just kind of like, oh, Kemper, like, whatever. Well, we are, what, I can't even, what I'm saying.
And by the way, Erica Learson, the best thing about that movie.
Yeah, right. She's in both movies. So.
Literally, it's my one note from that movie was, but Erica Learson's good in it.
There are things, obviously we've had this discussion, but there are things I like about it that you just don't care. But I also, another thing that I was hoping, I mean, it pulled me out of it, but it was something I could appreciate as I was wading through this film. I saw in the opening credits that I did not enjoy, that Vince Peranio
Uh,
did the production design, and I was like, oh my god, like John Water, like veteran, because he did the production design for Pink Flamingos, Female Trouble, Desperate Living, Polyester, and Hairspray, the OG 1988 Hairspray. So I was just like, oh, fun, good for him. And of course, it was shot in Baltimore, so that
I was
makes
gonna say
sense.
it, like you could, like they shot it so that you could just see like the woods and the building, but if you like craned up, you would see
Yeah.
Baltimore behind that building.
He also did the house on Sorority Row.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. For you, for you, for you.
Yeah.
But okay, because then there was another thing. They brought up the tree thing, and I was just kind of like,
Oh yeah.
how is this going to be significant? And then when I found out why it was, I was like, okay. So, oh, there was a tree there, and now that's why that tree was. I just didn't care. It just wasn't like there was no, oh, and they set it up like it might be. I was at least interested, and then it just didn't pay off for me. I didn't like Erica um making that comment while they're all sitting there drinking and smoking and everything about how there's two guys and one girl and no sex. I mean, come on. And it was just like, no, that's actually something I really appreciated about the first
Yeah.
movie, and I actually found very believable considering the circumstances they were in, especially if we're talking about the same movie. I don't like you. And I really don't give a shit what happens to you, because also you're a Wiccan, and that should make me like you. I have friends who are Wiccans and who don't act like that, and who also, I don't know, the
I
way she got offended about like the way, the way Wiccans were being depicted, like with the movie, in a way it's like, it should make her feel like a marginalized person and like somebody who deserves to kind of like have her own voice. But I was just kind of like, I just kept getting this weird flat militancy from
mhm.
her that I didn't find interesting or
No.
endearing or
I
relatable at
She
all.
comes across, but I think this in a very realistic way. She comes across as kind of full of shit when I
Yeah.
run into people like this in real life who
Yeah.
and I do not, I'm not saying this like as a woman she's being dramatic, like as a guy who like just throws that adjective around at a woman who's
Mm.
experiencing stuff, but she kind of does this performative I'm being dramatic thing that some people do that I'm like, oh, with this one, okay, here we go.
Even the way
Like,
she pulls the camera back on her when they're sitting around the fire, and she's just like, "No, what you don't understand, and
but
get this on camera." And I'm just
that
like, "Oh
makes
dear
her to me
God."
an authentic annoying person and less of an
Yeah.
authentic Wiccan that's performed badly.
Yeah.
You know, the she gets all upset and has to go into that other room and do the invocation of Persephone, and
God, poor
it's
Persephone.
it's so all about her in that moment, you know?
And all I could think was poor Persephone. Like, I mean, like, to be called on by people like you, hasn't she
Yeah.
been through enough? Like, being,
Between the way she kind of talks down to educate people about whether it's in the van or to Tristan when they're at the campgrounds about what Wicca really is and what Ellie really might have been. It all feels kind of just like fake and self-promoty, but I feel like that's who her character is.
yeah. And
Um,
oh, because there was even a way for her to develop, and kind of like, because when Kim started to chime in about like, people look at me and think that I'm like, like I drink blood or whatever the fuck she says,
and then
and I
she
was
steals the
just,
attention from Kim.
yeah, yeah. And immediately goes right back into her own thing, when she could have actually like kind of like just had a meeting with somebody and actually had a dialogue about perceptions and about like, and also the like, if somebody met a guy who said he was a witch, would he like, there's a conversation they could have that is highly relevant, but they don't go in any of those directions, because she doesn't take in the fact that Kim is actually trying to meet her halfway, like find some common ground. So I love the fact that Kim immediately kind of like cuts the cord without even intending to, which is just kind of like, it's a Christian construct, the devil. We don't even believe in the devil. Like, I believe in nature. And Kim just goes, still to her, but also to herself, like, I hate nature. And I'm like, I like you. See,
Yeah.
I like you. I want to follow you. I hope you are the final girl and that you triumph.
I have been her at the party where they're all, because the partying essentially is there's like they're having a good time, then the
Yeah.
campers show up
Right.
and they go back to partying.
Right.
And the other four continue to get, I mean, she's fucked up too, but they're all having fun, and then just goes to her like off alone and just
Yeah.
laying on some rocks and staring at this owl. And I'm like, I've been there, girl.
Totally.
I have
Yeah.
literally left the party and gone out to the front yard and walked down to the next house and just sort of,
Mm-hmm.
I just need to get the fuck away from everyone and ride this buzz. Okay,
Yeah,
bye.
just take a breather, just get my head back together, like because yeah, I'm just not vibing with
Yeah.
the direction this is all
Now,
taking.
I'm glad you brought up tropey though,
Yeah.
because I can't help but feel like that's intentional. Not in the most like Baz Luhrmann way of like you're watching a movie, but I do feel like the intention is I want you to be aware that you are watching a movie. Uh, the
Mm-hmm.
the way he plays with the lighting and the camera, he tries to make it as cinematic as he can to differentiate itself from the last movie, and maybe in a weird
Mm-hmm.
way by making some of these people feel like movie tropes. He is telling the story of a movie. Because I do know that there are certain horror beats he hit in this on purpose, because part of the intentions is uh, how much of these people's behaviors and actions are informed by not just the experience and the facts and the fandom of that first movie, but also being part of the generation that just grew up with VHS being so available, like media consumers.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of horror movie tropes in this movie intentionally. I don't know how well that comes across. I think it comes across in the story a bit
Mm-hmm.
with, you know, she's spinning around a tree like the girl in Evil Dead 2. We have Hounds of Hell, like from The Omen. You have stuff going in reverse, like playing the tape in reverse in Exorcist. But
Right.
character tropes takes it to me like the next level. But if anything, the thing that I like about the characters in this that was intentional, and I think it comes across,
Mm-hmm.
and this goes back a bit to what you're saying about the opening segment, is that and the thing that I loved about this movie then, and I love it now, but I think someone coming into this movie cold may not latch onto it, but so much that you see in the first 10, 15 minutes of this movie really happened. Like, do you remember on the news
Mm-hmm.
where like goobs were showing up in Burkittsville,
Yeah.
and the city was just like, get the fuck out of here. It was a movie and it was a problem. And people were selling dirt on the internet.
Yep.
Like, people were selling rocks. You could buy that shit on eBay. It all happened. And the fact that this movie kind of all not only pulls into the story, but kind of thumbs its nose at certain parts of the reaction.
Yeah.
I think the movie also is taking different kinds of people
Mm-hmm.
in response to the movie and made them kind of archetypes in the movie. So you've got, there were legitimate kind of goth counterculture people who just like, hey, it's a fun movie, I like it. You did have Wiccans who were like, hey, what the fuck, movie? Which still happens now with anything. I mean,
Yeah.
I think the greatest contemporary example is like people are starting to get really, really sick of like voodoo villains.
Yes.
And voodoo is considered a real religion, and why are we always just the fucking bad guy in these movies?
Some people been fed up for a long time with that.
So there was a real Wiccan response from that community. People going, "Hey, what the fuck, movie?" Jeff obviously is really into the movie and the fandom, but also is happy to exploit it for financial gain, just like all the people who really were selling dirt and rocks. And this sort of I don't want to say like armchair elitist, but the observers of the movie, the intellectuals going, yes, and from two different points of view of oh, that, don't you understand that the movie is real? And yes, no, but the movie was fake. And these are all responses to the movie personified in a movie that's commenting on the response to the movie. So
Right.
I appreciate that. There's a lot
I,
that I appreciate.
I did too for 3 minutes, and then, but I mean,
I'm
even
I'm glad you like the opening segment too, because like the first movie, aside from Joe Berlinger's cameo, all the people that are being interviewed are Burkittsville residents.
Okay,
It's just that they didn't
cool.
get to interview as many because a lot of people were like, "Get the fuck out of here!"
Right.
But and I mean, it played like gangbusters. I remember that lady in the theater, or in the theater, the lady who's like, "But every day, if I come out in the morning, I always have a full face of makeup." Whole
Yeah.
theater laughs.
Yeah.
The lady talking about selling the rocks, and then she's like, "Well, you can't sell rocks as good as dirt. 'Cause it costs more to ship rocks."
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, that's good stuff.
And then we see Burn Notice talking about. I could hear the audience laughing when Burn Notice was going off about
Oh, I
like,
know.
yeah,
My foot was
yeah,
holding.
the naysayers and the whatever, and I know because I know. Yeah. Oh, but okay, that's another thing. Like bringing it, I couldn't help but wonder if, as perhaps maybe the studio was encroaching upon the director's vision, if maybe this line of dialogue found its way into the exchange, getting back to them all sitting around like the campfire and everything and getting wasted and everything like that. Burn Notice has the line, "Video never lies, Kim, film does." And I couldn't help but think, yeah, why are we fucking watching this movie on film? And maybe they're actually, now that I think about it, now that I know what the direction it takes,
Mm-hmm.
maybe there's something to be said about that. But then again, the back half of it makes sense for this movie's sake, but the front half of it, the video never lies. It's like, well, I mean, didn't it though? I mean, well, okay. See, now I'm like really like trying to wrap my head around it. I'm thinking video didn't lie when it revealed everything that was going on at the end when we saw Kim in the convenience store hacking at that woman with the nail file and everything, the emery board or whatever. And then, but I mean, it makes me think about like the first movie, because the first movie in this world is a movie, but it was shot on video and it's a lie. So I don't know. It's a weird.
Well, I think you're overthinking it in regards to the first movie. Although there is something to be said about that. Maybe I'll get to that later.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, that was definitely and that's not a studio note. That was his line. And I remember the first time I heard that, I go, that's great, because you have to remember, especially at the time, there was like the media of film was just film. We didn't even have, 28 Days Later and Star Wars being shot digitally yet. Well, that's not true. One scene in Phantom Menace was shot digitally in 99. But still, the digital boom hadn't really happened yet. We had newer DV tapes for home camcorders, and we were about to like really get that. And I know Blair Witch was partially shot digitally. In fact, a lot of it was, or at least shot on video, and then segments of it were shot on 16 millimeter. But that language was so, it's not as relevant now. But like film represented a crew and a script, and this film costs money. It's for media. Video was the news. Video was Rodney King being captured on videotape. Like video was the
courtroom.
Yes, it was the economical thing that captured the truth. And if you saw security footage, it's always on video, and that has gone away since film as an industry has gone digital, and we all have one of these in our hands. So even just watching it for the first time before we get to the ending, I'm like, oh, it's a good line, because it's so true. Because when we watch the video, we presume it's the truth, which is why it's so easy to lie to people with video. Just kind of one of the themes of the movie, is whether you take video at truth or not, and the idea of how seriously do you take your entertainment or not, or what you're seeing in your eyes, what your eyes are seeing, how seriously do you take it? But then when you get to the third act, it really does become this idea that the filmed world that you're watching can be lying to you, just the way any movie where we don't know what we're seeing or experiencing is reality or not. And then the
Mhm.
truth of things is revealed like, no, here's the videotape.
Right.
This is what really happened. Um, at least that's the way I took it. And I know later the directors even said, yes, the video is the truth. That's why that line is in there to begin with.
Gotcha.
But I remember when this movie came out, because at least the way it unfolded to me was that, yes, what we are seeing for most of the movie,
Yeah.
you have to question how much of it is them being bewitched by the Blair Witch, how much of
Yeah.
them are, or because there's an or group delusional, you know,
Sure.
either way, what they're experiencing may not be reality. And then video reveals reality. But I talked to one person who had the complete opposite reaction, and they're like, no. The impression I got was that everything that you're watching in the filmed world is real, and that the Blair Witch fucked with the videotapes. And I'm like, that doesn't make
Mm.
sense with the theme of the movie. It doesn't follow up with Jeff's line. But then for the first time in like 22 years, I really started to go, what if with it? And I don't
Right.
agree with it,
No, me
but I
neither.
but it's an interesting, because to me, you came into my woods not with all of you with the best intentions, and you're here to like consume and enjoy this shit. Get the fuck out of my
Mm.
woods. In fact, let's. I'm gonna stay with you, and I'm gonna haunt you. I'm gonna possess Tristan. I'm gonna fuck with all your heads to the degree that I can manipulate you into doing stuff. Which, like I said before in the last podcast,
Yeah.
with God, I want to say Leonard, but who's that's his last name, right?
Josh.
Joshua Leonard. I
Yeah.
always my interpretation was that he was kind of possessed by the witch,
Mm-hmm.
but I never thought about what was he seeing and experiencing through his possession.
Mm.
And now I have to wonder,
Oh, I see.
now we're seeing they're going on a journey
Mm-hmm.
that isn't actually real, but it feels real to them. And their actions are literally being controlled by someone else, and they don't even know it because they're on a different ride. Um, that's the journey I go on. But I do think, as a fun what if, god damn, isn't it mean if everything they went through was real and they didn't, like, nobody killed Erica, but the witch somehow did, but she's gonna fuck with the video to frame them. And I go, that's some cold shit. That's not the movie, but that's some cold shit.
Yeah.
That's mean. And I just never liked that idea when I had that conversation with that one person, because I'm like, I don't like the idea of the witch actually fucking with videotape and manipulating imagery.
Right.
Like, I can get her manipulating someone's what their eyes are seeing in their brain, but I don't like her manipulating actual videotape. That doesn't make any sense to me.
But it also at the same time creates like a question mark about, or not even a question mark, but like a possibility as to that's why she buries this stuff with the intention of it being found after she's buried it, because that's the spell. That's what's going
Yeah.
to pervert the imagery and just kind of like be whatever she wants them to depict, to see as depicting happening. Because also you're making me
Well,
think like, what's the pregnant girl's name?
Tristan.
Tristan, thank you. When Tristan because you just gave me a thought, like, what if neither reality that's depicted either on film or on video is Tristan's reality, and instead of actually having the Blair Witch possess one of the people among your group, what if instead of possessing them, what if she's just fucking with the perspective of everyone else in the group,
Mm-hmm.
while the person who is not possessed but who has been kind of like singled out is reeling the way Tristan was kind of reeling, going like, what are you talking about? I'm your wife. Stop it. Just I need to get away from you, whatever. So what if all of that was actually going on to an extent, but what if there, I mean, that's the thing, is like, what if none of it is reliable? What if,
Right?
yeah.
It's, again, I like to chew on this movie.
Yeah,
And
okay, I get that.
you talked about, how that relates to what you saw in the first movie, which was shot on video.
Right.
And it's a fun what if to be like, well, based on this movie, how much of what I just watched in Blair Witch 1 was their real experience or just what was captured on video, and maybe they were going on a whole different ride that we don't even see.
So it makes the
Like,
statement about film versus video ironic because nothing can depict the truth. Anything can be manipulated.
especially within the way the witch operates,
Yeah.
if you want to view it that way.
But even the irony, like what I was kind of like tripping over with, like, well, if the statement is true that Burn Notice says, then what does that say about like the first movie being a movie in this world? Well, it says that it's on video, yet it still managed to convince, or at least get so many people on board with it that they want to go visit Burkittsville now and they want to go
Right.
see the Blair Witch and everything like that. When it's on video, like it's a
Right.
lie. It's on video,
I
so it's
think
convincing people it's true, but it is a lie.
I will say that I think that line applies just to this movie, but sometimes it's fun to think about
And that
how
okay,
does it apply to the first movie.
and that comes back to, again, I understand where you're coming from with what you're saying, like as far as like, my head and everything like that. And I'm even starting to get a little bit more on board. Like I'm like, okay, cool. Like discussing this is cool. That said, it just kind of makes me sad. And it's probably not fair to compare the sequel to the original, but the things that we were speculating about in the original were making it scarier for me. We're actually like, fucking me up and making me, even as I was recounting them and like
Mhm.
speculating about things with you, I was getting like, I'm getting really uncomfortable right now. I'm not getting uncomfortable about speculating about it. It's interesting.
Yeah. No,
Uh,
I don't think the movie's scary. I just think it's interesting.
yeah, it's a shame.
That's
I did,
that's
on a lighter note, I did appreciate the fact that like when the tourists came upon their little
uh
encampment, and they all jointly kind of decided to pretend that like the girls are freaked out, and also just like that they're like, bad mouthing the Wiccan and everything like that. And I just love the fact that Burn Notice says your balls will fall off in 3 days,
oh yeah.
on the heels of like,
It'll come back to you threefold.
it'll come back to you threefold. So he says that, and I'm just kind of like, well, dude, now your balls are going to fall off like now. So that was kind of fun. I appreciated the ambiguity of the baby blood river dream,
Oh
because I
yeah.
didn't quite understand. I didn't know it was a dream at first. I was just kind of like, I didn't even know. I knew, she was with child and everything like that, but I was just kind of like, wait, but wait, is that an actual baby? Are they going to find a child? Because there were baby crying in the first movie. Wait, oh my god, mind fuckery. Let's see where this goes. And then it just turned out like I had a dream. I did something bad to the baby. Like everything that's kind of set up to kind of like hook me and get me interested just doesn't. I just wish it were explored potential rather than feel like unexplored potential. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I get that. I have a little, well, I have a weird one because it's a product of studio meddling,
Yeah,
but the unexplored potential, because I remember seeing the movie for the first time,
yeah,
and knowing based on just like the shadow of the Blair Witch, like Jeff Patterson, he's like a figure in this. And even the way the third trailer, because there's like two teasers and then the
yeah.
trailer, and the trailer did something about like and unlock the truth, but something about the voiceover made it hint at like that Jeff was going to be like a villain, and it cuts to a shot that has a completely different context in the movie. In the movie, he's just sort of watching Erica doing her little
Mhm.
chant. But when you put it in a trailer after setting that up, it makes it feel like he's got evil intentions. Who is he watching?
Mhm.
The studio saw the what's kind of referred to as the director's cut, because he had a final, like a cut that was assembled, and then they went, let's add some stuff. One of the things they decided was there's no villain in this movie. We should make Jeff the villain.
Mm.
So let's shoot some stuff with him in an asylum.
Mm.
Um, when
Hmm.
you watch the beginning of the movie,
Yeah.
and I will go on record as saying I think, because almost everyone in this movie, this is their first lead role on film.
Mhm.
He comes out the gate swinging as a very watchable presence.
Mm.
And when you have him in the asylum and you just do this tracking shot, And I just have to wonder, what the fuck is he thinking as he just smacks the table and yells, "Enough!" I remember watching that first and going, "Oh, what's this guy's fucking deal?" And then, since the movie was never made to explain that, and they just
Yeah.
insert some stuff towards the beginning,
Yeah.
that's a huge letdown because he is. If anyone is, I don't want to call them a villain, but when you get to the third act of the movie, from the other character's point of view, Tristan is someone to be worried about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So if you were supposed to do anything, which you shouldn't, but if you were the studio, I would try to make some sort of bullshit backstory about her and
Yeah.
maybe why she's susceptible to this kind of, I don't know, but or some kind of character background that then pays off with her. But I
Yeah.
don't watch this movie with the third act and Tristan and go, Jeffrey needs to be the bad guy.
No,
But when you
no,
watch it for the first time, you think that might be going somewhere. And it
yeah. I don't,
doesn't.
well, because also there's the fact, okay, there's a few things about like the characters and the performances I want to address.
All right.
Um, because one thing that I was really, really kind of saddened by was there are moments with Burn Notice, Jeff, when he is like red-eyed, and I don't think it's just because he's stoned, but he is like red-eyed and at the end of his rope and just like kind of clutching at straws and giving this performance that is like on the verge, of a complete meltdown. And like he's on the precipice, just about to fall off and just flip out on everybody. And I don't feel like it's the same movie. I'm like, I want to watch that movie. I want to feel the stakes. I feel like he's giving a great performance. I don't understand why the things that are happening around him are influencing that kind of a reaction. It's the reaction is so much more interesting than what is causing the reaction for me.
I get that.
And then by and large, like that's a big positive for him. But by and large, a big negative for me, just in terms of the ride of the movie, whether what's real and what isn't real. I mean, just as a moviegoer who's sitting there being subjected to scenes and stuff like that, one thing that got really, really old for me that it was the yelling. There were just so many people who, you talk about like slamming things down and people just like, listen, you better tell us right now, just like over and over again. I was just gonna like, when in doubt, I hope this cast was not directed to just yell, but I don't know who to blame. I don't know what I don't know what the situation was and how much
I
of it was studio interference and how much of it was stuff getting rewritten, or if it was just really kind of like some really poor points in the script that could have been refined. Because one thing that we praised so much, and again, to compare it to the first movie, were the predicaments the characters kept finding themselves in. And I don't need them to be in the same predicaments, but if we're going to hit some key things and make this a franchise, some things that need to remain intact for me, or some things that might help, are like, okay, what worked in the first movie? And I don't mean, okay, so people out, found footage, people straight, people who might know each other, might not know each other, and they're out in the woods and everything. I just mean warranted anger.
Okay.
Dimension in the characters, contradiction, even, because things that feel natural in terms of like, I'm usually this voice in the room, but right now, because these two other people are like doing this, now I'll be this voice in the room. That feels organic to me, and it didn't feel organic with this group. It felt like, what are we even fighting about? What are we even
I'm
yelling at each
thinking
other? Why are we defending each other when we don't know each other? And there's no bond that was set up to kind of like make that feel organic. It just felt like a lot of screaming to me. So
there's some beats like at least there's one that I'm convinced as a studio is because they use it at the end of a beat to cut to the interrogation that was never meant to be there. So when he's trying to get Tristan to take some sleeping pills and he goes, take the pills. I don't want to take the pills. And then I don't even know if he's in frame, but he yells, take the pills. And it cuts to like him being interrogated. And I'm like, that was looped in to cut to an interrogation shot. Because if that was real, slow your fucking roll, guy. You were in a, like, that's abusive shit.
Right.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Although one of the ones that makes me laugh, I just love it as a performance, but I also think they're very heightened in the moment. You've woken up. You don't remember where things are. the manuscript is literally snowing on you.
You're right.
Your camera equipment is trashed.
Right.
And he goes and pulls these tapes out. Like, where the fuck? How the fuck did these get there? And fucking Erica's like, are they your tapes? And he's ignoring her and asking, why'd you put them in there? And she's like, but are they your tapes? Shut the fuck up. And then finally he's saying something. She's, are they? He's like, yes, Erica, they're my tapes. And like, the veins are bullshit. And he does it like to her fucking face. But I also think like, we're in the middle of this shit. I'm acting like they're my tapes. So do you really need to fucking know? Like, I get why he's yelling. Maybe bring it down to a 7 instead of a 10, though, for manners' sake. But I love it as a performance.
Also, I mean, just from a
Have you ever been that mad though in the moment where you're like, yes, shut the fuck up? Like, I buy it, but it's funny.
There's a way to make that work. I don't think they nailed it. But one thing that I did appreciate about, I'm glad you brought up that sequence because I didn't make a note about it, but it was something that was visually arresting to me, was just seeing the paper, because at first you didn't even know if it's paper. It could be paint chips or you know, whatever it is. It could be debris from a fire. You don't know. I mean, because sometimes charcoal, sometimes things that burn, they don't burn to the point that they're black, they burn to the point that they're white. So just creating visual interest and not knowing like what's kind of like raining down on them, and also not knowing how it happened, and the fact that it was just kind of like omnipresent like through that whole sequence. And they kept drifting into like other regions and still it was there, and I was just kind of like, oh, this is really okay. What's gonna happen? And again, it didn't really, the answer is they tore their shit up and threw it up into the air. Great.
Well, that's fine. I'm not with you on that. If anything, that's weird for me, right? Because, like, okay, so one of the biggest questions that you're supposed to, and for what you know, is that are the events that are occurring the product of mass delusion or some sort of evil or bewitching? I've seen the movie enough times and watched the things that occur that go, no, this is definitely evil befalling them. This is not something that they are imagining together. And one of them, to me, at least, if I'm still going on what I'm seeing is real to a certain degree, I don't think any human could rip the paper into that tiny amount of little, like, that's some witchcraft right there. That's some.
I was hoping, but then it was, I mean, well, now we have the unreliable,
correct,
thing. So that might be if I watch this movie again, that might be a good thing to bring to the table when I do.
While we're at the big camping scene at Rustin Pars, more on that subject, you'd mentioned the tree earlier, and one fun little thing about that tree, aside from helping visually establish whether you can trust or not what you're seeing in 35 versus the reality of video, is we talked about this briefly, not briefly, we talked about this quite a bit in the Blair Witch discussion, Blair Witch 1, about the idea that's not really presented in the movie, but because of the curse of the Blair Witch, the idea that since Rustin Parr's house is rubble in 1994, then what fucking house are they running through? And this idea of part of the magic of the Blair Witch is the idea of time manipulation, and them which I mentioned is touched upon in 2 and really touched upon in 3. If you want to play with that notion, and to refresh anyone, there's a theory that the reason why they're running around Rustin Parr's house in Blair Witch Project is because they're maybe not in 1994 at that time, they're in the 40s,
right,
when the house still stood. It's just something to chew on, that there's a giant tree, because at that moment they are not in 1999, they are way further into the future, but the videotape is capturing that little tree in 1999. And I just thought, if the idea of time travel is a thing that is hinted at, it is continued to be hinted at in this movie. And if you want to go with it, you can still go with it. And I like that.
That's helpful.
Then the third movie, which we'll get into later, but the third movie is
Yeah.
like, I don't know, what if they're constantly like dipping and ducking?
Yeah. Totally.
I kind of liked what they did in 1 and 2 a little more, but okay, you know, it's there if you want it, and it can be not there if you don't want it, you know.
Yeah. That said, I think beyond that point, beyond like kind of like, you know, with the papers falling and them waking up, I think we're kind of into the second act of the movie at that point.
Yeah, that kicks off like act 2.
Yeah. So I gotta say, this is when my positive notes started, because
I thought you were about to say stopped.
no, because but I say positive with, you know, quotes, because I started to laugh a lot.
Well,
well, you'll hear some of the things that made me laugh, and maybe they make you laugh too. I just because when they were discovering things, and they like discover that the equipment, like everything, and it's all messed up, and they're just like, it's all, and Kim just exclaims this weird line, "These things look like they were bit off," and I'm just like, is that gonna go so? Nothing ever looked bit. I mean, wait, bit out like, you know. I don't know. I was like, okay, that's
I just
weird.
thought the joints are very like mangled. I just went, oh yeah, it's
like the Blair Witch is like gnawing on their shit.
Yeah.
And then then I laughed even harder because I'm sorry, because it's not something to laugh at, but it was, maybe there was some hysteria behind it too, just because it's like, oh God, a miscarriage. But the way Tristan finds out that she's miscarrying her child is that she touches her face, and there's vaginal blood on her face. Where were her hands? Because we even pan down or tilt down to like her crotch, and it's like right there in her crotch. So was she like cupping her?
Oh yeah. I never thought about that till right now.
I know, I couldn't not.
But I like to imagine, and she's leaning, so like she's having like a whole conversation where she's just like, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Amid the hysteria, like everybody's around, she's just going, oh, do we have a bathroom? Anyway, then I wrote, okay, this guy, I didn't even look him up. I don't know what else he's done. I don't know if he's an actor.
Oh, Sheriff Cravens?
You know exactly who I'm talking about.
I'm so glad you brought him up. Go on.
Okay, because I wrote down, he has a lot of great lines. I couldn't write them all down because kind of every time. Well, that's the thing. Okay, you have been a pain in this town's ass since you were 10. You need to learn to stay out of trouble, boy. It makes you defensive, anxious. Last thing you need is to end up in the loony bin. It's just like, who the fuck are you? And why is this the first time I'm noticing you or seeing you? I don't even know if he was in the movie prior to that, and I just didn't pick it up. Oh my God. I was just kind of like, more of you, please. Like, more of whatever this is, because it feels like it started in earnest, like it was going to be something really, like it was going to be something cool. Then like it was something that was like self-conscious about being cool. Then I started to kind of like go, okay, this, like, I don't know what to make of this movie. And then in this, at this point, I'm just kind of like, can we just go full camp then? Can we just get,
well, you want to talk about tropey,
right?
Like, I'm glad you brought him up. Fun trivia. The studio wanted Joe Berlinger to cast the guy who played the sheriff in The Curse of the Blair Witch.
Okay.
And I guess they even flew him out, and like he read, and it just wasn't like, it was good for Curse of the Blair Witch, but it's just not enough for what we need for this movie. So he ended up casting someone else. I will tell you my experience with him, which was I was, real. I mean, I love him now, but the first time I saw it, he's the only thing I wasn't on board with, because I was really kind of like vibing with that cast. And then here comes this character who sounds like this. And he has one of my favorite lines of the movie, which is when they cut to in the opening sequence. And there's all these like 20-something goth kids. Go on, get out of here. There is no goddamn Blair Witch.
Yeah.
And it just so didn't jive. He felt like a Looney Tunes character.
He did.
He felt like Yosemite Sam in the middle of a Blair
Totally.
Witch movie.
Yeah.
And I didn't used to dig on it. And now I quite dig on it.
Yeah.
One of the things that helped turn me, though, well, it wasn't just like an affection for the character that you have. I now have an affection for him. You got there on your own, and good for you. I got there because Joe Berlinger has directed a trilogy of fucking excellent movies. The third one was nominated for an Oscar, the Paradise Lost trilogy. It's the reason why he got this job. And thematically, there's a lot that happens in this movie that is kind of an extension of those movies. And one of them, I remember watching this going, this guy doesn't feel real. This guy doesn't feel believable. For you and anyone who hasn't, there's the, oh God, I forgot the name of the city, but there's basically, long story short, there's 3 teenage boys who are accused of murdering children in the woods. And the very narrow-minded town's like, well, yeah, they dress in black and they listen to heavy metal. They worship the devil. And it's all about the innocence or not of these 3 supposed murderers.
Right.
Not only are there thematic extensions, there is an adult in that documentary who talks and sounds just like this. And I'm just like, oh my God, he's fucking real. Like, this exists. This isn't just a Looney Tunes character.
Yeah.
I'm looking at him in this documentary.
Yeah.
And he even has like long hair. And I'm just like, oh. So now when I look at him in the movie, I just accept like, oh, those people are real. Those people exist in our world. They have positions of power and they vote and they eat, and these people are real. So I am quite on board with Sheriff Cravens.
Yeah, when he or his voice, I kind of lost interest by that point when he was outside the door of the house that they were all occupying, the space that they were all occupying. But when he was out there screaming and everything like that, I was full on getting like Jim Cedow, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Look what your brother did to the door. I was so happy because he just kept screaming at Burn Notice, and I was just kind of like, yeah, let it go, baby. Also, okay, so when they all get back into that space, I don't even know what to call it. Is it a house?
Jeff's loft.
Jeff's loft,
because it's a former factory.
Yeah, that thing.
Yeah.
When they all get back there, they started doing that thing with the little girl.
Yes.
Okay. That I'm not one of those people who's immune to the little girl ghost scare, tactic. Like, I mean, I can be like, oh, I don't want to see a child ghost and everything like that. I saw her, and especially when she was moving backwards, I think when Erica saw her, I think is what I remember. And she's like walking backwards on the bridge or something, and she says to them, "You brought it back with you," or whatever she says. I laughed so hard because, number one, the line, "You brought it back with you," I was like, you brought what back? Like, what? That was never a thing. Okay, that you can, like, I guess the mark or whatever. Okay, whatever. But then also the fact that the movements, it looked like she was rapping or something. Like, oh, here I go again, girls. What's my weakness, man? I mean, I didn't know where. I just thought, like, okay, somebody needs to like just kind of like make a gif of that, and just put like a bunch, I don't know, a bunch of like rappers around her or something like that. I thought it was really funny and cute. What, you had a reaction though when I mentioned the girl? Like, what?
I remember, because that was for me, and it's funny because it was like that was the first time I ever saw. We've had things like, because she was filmed in reverse, so that when she walks backwards, it feels kind of unnatural.
Yeah,
that has been done.
Yes,
it's been David Lynched to death. But that was the first time I'd ever seen when they kind of pulled the frames and made it jittery.
Yeah.
And I remember, I'm not saying like it was some huge benchmark, but then you started seeing more creepy kids with the jittering and
yeah.
Even you start seeing in action movies. There's beats in Gladiator where the frames are pulled to create a jittery effect for action. But I remember the first time I saw that, it really unnerved me.
Oh.
I'd never seen it before, ever. This backwards walking jittery girl, and then we had like a million jittery girls.
Okay, I
Um,
wonder. Yeah, because I all I could think was I've seen this and I've seen it done better, but I wonder if I'd seen
um,
it in at the time of its release, if I would have
yeah.
felt the same way.
Although I'm only referring to her first time when you see her in the hospital.
Oh, okay.
And
Okay.
again, I'm glad you mentioned it because originally, all the okay. Remember how Jeff hears the dogs, goes to the front door,
Yeah.
goes back to get the shotgun, and when he goes back, they're gone,
Mhm.
and they're gone. That was supposed to every weird thing that they saw was supposed to be like they're there and they're gone.
Okay.
The studio insisted, no, you need to make her dissolve because originally you see like Tristan would blink, and when she would open her eyes, the girl was supposed to be gone.
Hmm.
And same thing with her second appearance, and both times they're like, no, we need to do the fade out. And he's like, but then like the whole point is that when they close their eyes to open them, like they don't know if they saw it or
Yeah.
not,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
it's just really there. Anyway,
Okay. That.
but the line is definitely looped. You brought it back, like to me, like I already know, like well, first of all, you're technically still in the Black Hills woods,
Yeah.
but like you've escaped the woods. You're now, inside walls, and the evil is still with you. And yes,
I
you are
never.
marked.
I know. Okay. I never perceived being indoors as being safe from the woods. Like you're still. It's all like one giant snow globe, and the Blair Witch is the Krampus going like this,
Yeah, but
But
more with your positive notes that aren't really positive. Let's hear them.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Another one that I laughed at loud at, and this is when it started to kind of turn for me. Not entirely, but I did keep laughing. I laughed at Kim's line when I think she was talking to Erica when Erica was freaking out. I think. Oh wait, no, who was she talking to? I don't know. You'll remember, but she was talking to somebody who was freaking out about like the marks that they had on
Mhm.
their body, and she just said, Kim said, I've got the same thing. It's nothing. It's poison oak or something. And I'm like, okay, I was so on board with you as a character because you seemed so perceptive. You're a fucking psychic. It doesn't mean that you know everything, but it means that you should probably have some kind of like self-awareness and some kind of like knowledge that like, oh shit, I've got marks on my body. There's a feeling around these that it's not poison oak because I'm highly intuitive, at least more than the rest of these fucks, but they also kind of start taking turns being intuitive, and maybe that's supposed to be another disorienting thing or another effect of the Blair Witch, but I thought it was shitty. I thought it was stupid, but I did laugh just because it's such a stupid thing to say. It's like you don't know you're in a horror movie yet. um
It's not a perfect movie, Eddie. It's not
I
perfect.
know, I know. And I was laughing, but then I laughed again when, oh my God, because then they found out they all had the marks, I guess,
Mhm.
and they were like, "Where's Erica? Where's Erica?" And Kim runs, I guess, upstairs, and she goes to the room where Erica was left, where I guess she was her Persephone.
Earth and wind and fire,
and she
smoke. Yeah.
and she finds a fucking just like pile of clothes and her shoes just laying there like she just vanished.
Uh huh.
I thought that was so fucking funny.
Oh,
I don't
just
know. I
finding
just
the.
just kind of finding her clothes. It was just kind of like I kept expecting, like underneath, like the clothes for the hey, hey, guys,
Oh,
help me,
yeah, like when Paul McCartney gets shrunken in Help,
right?
and then
Or
she gets a little gum wrapper and wraps it around herself to
right,
like.
or that she just vanished. Because I mean, that's another thing that like never really happened. That like you vanish, but your clothes remain. Like that was kind of silly. I
However,
mean,
right, but then in the footage, you do see that like Jeffrey is laying her clothes out. Why he's doing it, but at least somebody else did it.
I was so checked out by that point that I didn't even care. But I mean, riding the wave of it, I was just kind of like, oh, this is another franchise now. Like this is not like the unwrapping of the tongue and the molars, perhaps
No, no, it's
in the
not.
thing. Yeah, this
And
is
honestly, thank God, because you cannot replicate that lightning in a bottle twice.
sure, sure, sure. But
And
I
you
mean,
can't and you can't even attempt to like replicate that or imitate it or try to like extend it organically in its own thing.
so
Like,
let's just go full on ridiculous.
well, at least let's do something fucking different because it's insulting to the audience to give them the same. and it'd be a fool's errand to like try to create the same.
I could say the same thing about Moulin Rouge on stage, but that's another conversation. Anyway, but then I wrote it down again because I feel like it was said about 6 times by this point. The line, "We brought something back with us." I just felt like they kept saying it over and over again, and I was like, okay, now I'm in like Suicide Squad territory. It's like, don't forget, we're the bad guys, you know? And I was like, okay, we got it. You brought something back with you. I mean, you still haven't left anywhere, but whatever. I don't know why this is the line that's getting echoed. Because you all get it. You all know you brought something. I mean, obviously you're marked. Like, can we move on from there? But I laughed. I did laugh. And then that's when it came up. Okay, this was something I wanted to ask you about, because the name Ellie Kedward came up, and obviously like 1785, the Blair Witch, and blah blah blah, back when it was Blair, Maryland, and not Burkittsville and all that stuff. Exiled in winter, floating, and all of that stuff. The Little Buster Boys. Was that something that was covered in Curse of the Blair Witch that I just kind of blinked and missed?
Yeah.
Or
that is
okay.
the Burkittsville 7. Those are the people that Rustin Parr took to his house.
Okay.
Those are the
That's
kids
what I
whose handprints you're seeing all over the house.
Okay, because they were brought up the same time her name was brought up, and I guess I was listening for them both at the same time, and when I was watching Curse of the Blair Witch. Okay, because I had his name on another
Right.
page.
You usually hear
Okay.
people reference Rustin Parr or his house.
Yeah.
And those kids, but those kids are those kids, sometimes referred to as the Burkittsville. They did 2 TV documentaries for this movie.
Right.
One was Shadow of the Blair Witch, which is about the real Jeff Patterson. And then they did another one called the Burkittsville 7, which I barely remember, but it basically was just a retread of the Rustin Parr thing. And that one actually still felt like a real documentary TV show. It was just kind of redundant because I remember Rustin. I mean, they go a little bit more into the kids.
Okay.
But yeah, those are the kids.
Cool. Yeah, I by that point I was kind of like, what? And I just wrote, I think we're well into the 3rd act. When I wrote this, I just said so checked out by the 3rd act. But I wanted to, okay, maybe this is a good thing to ask now that we've already kind of established the weirdness of the video versus film and what is reality and everything. But I just wrote, does it make sense that we're watching a tape of Tristan hiding the tapes? Because she is literally on a tape that's being played back, hiding the tapes underneath the rocks and everything. And I was just kind of like, so did she leave that tape out, or is that supposed to be a mindfuck thing, or is that just kind of like an oversight? Like,
I wonder if that's an over. I was hoping you would bring something up that would make me in my 22 years go, huh? And I think you just might have. Although, one could argue that she still needs one tape to kind of chronicle her shit. So she has the aha for them.
Right. So
but how did the tape, if they're watching it, get in there?
Yeah.
Magic. She's like, well, then I stopped hitting. I then turned the camera off and then dug up and put that or
that seems like a lot of work.
I never really questioned it because I love the beat it ends on, and that just always distracted me from the logistical question. So thank you for that.
Okay, cool.
But I love that she calls back to Heather. But instead of being scared, it's this fuck you smirk, I really like to believe she is truly like inhabited by Ellie in that moment. And goes, you guys came here for this movie, right? You came here for this? All right. Like, I'll give you fucking this.
Right.
But then it requires me to have to,
Right.
Go put this tape with the other tapes. Well, sure.
Right. Also, okay, there was a quote in there that it just like bothered me, and I maybe you can explain it to me, because it felt like, again, maybe it's meant to be ironic or like self-referential, so it's not true, but it was just the line at the end of the movie. I don't even know who the fuck said it, but it's just like, violent art inspired real life violence. And it made me mad, and maybe it's supposed to make me mad, but because it made me think like, so we're talking about the Blair Witch
Right.
project, one of the most unviolent
Yes.
horror movies to reach this level of success. And we're calling it violent because it's horror, and it
Yes.
inspired real life violence. It's like, well, huh? So is that the
Yes.
point? Okay, did
I,
I?
I mean, I don't know if it's the point, but it's definitely what I take from it for two reasons. One, there's no actual violence like on camera, but one could argue the removal of teeth and tongue is a very violent act.
Mhm.
So let's say some Joe Blow goes, "Oh, is that? I heard about there's like a bundle of sticks with like someone's teeth in it, right? Oh my god, how horrific!" But two, this sort of clutching your pearls when you haven't even seen the fucking thing. The people who
Right.
I don't like fucking torture porn. Like, well, did you watch fucking Hostel or Saw? Do you even know what you're talking about? Like, the first Saw actually isn't torture porny. Um,
No, no.
uh, uh, what's a good my biggest example is the Human Centipede.
Ah,
People go, oh, disgusting, and I'm like, well, the first movie isn't like the guy points in a chart what he's gonna do to them, and then it cuts away, and you don't see any of what he does to them.
mm.
And like it's implied that like someone's eating poop, but you don't see poop. Like you don't. Someone gets their knee cut and some blood drips, and he goes "La, la, la, la," to the blood. It's not a very gory movie. It's not until the second movie that it becomes like a gross gory
Oh,
movie.
dear God, dear God.
So
Yeah.
to me, it felt like the kind of newscast that somebody who's never seen
Mm.
Friday the 13th or any of this shit, but goes, "Oh, it's a horror movie, real life violence, creates violence because violence is media." It actually felt like very honest that the reporter was that fucking stupid.
Okay, okay, cool. Because I had to wonder for a minute. I was just kind of like, okay, what fucking movie am I watching now? What is
I
this
mean,
director trying to say?
and this is coming
But
from a documentarian who's literally made a movie about people who think that like, oh, they listen to Metallica, right? So these kids are demonic.
right,
So,
right. Okay, so it's making a point.
I think it is.
I would hope so. Like, because I mean, otherwise, I just kind of feel like, what the fuck were you doing? Like, waste my fucking afternoon now. But um, but and that was okay. That's another thing that I didn't understand, and maybe I don't know if you have a way to speak to this, but maybe it's just another thing that I thought like worked so well in the first movie and missed in this one was again, because I got a taste of it in the beginning with the townspeople and their kind of like distaste or even just like their means of coping, their different ways of coping with like the way Burkittsville has been invaded now with fandom and everything like that, the aftermath. Um seem to be so compelling and so interesting and so in alignment with the person on the street interviews that we got in the first movie. That by the time we get back to, I mean, they make it a point to say they're not in Burkittsville because Burn Notice wouldn't even take a shit in Burkittsville, so they're
Mhm.
stopping in like a town on the outskirts. I don't remember which one.
Oh, I don't shop in Burkittsville. I don't even piss there.
Yeah, that thing.
Yeah.
So they're obviously not in Burkittsville, they're in some other place, but
Mhm.
there's still like this sense of like this kind of hive mind town mentality to react to these newcomers in a very Dairy Maine, we're being, kind of like controlled by Pennywise kind of
Uh-huh.
thing. So, newcomers, let's all look at them and let's get in their face and let's, be really hostile and really, and again, if we're playing with like their perspective, they're not in Blair though. Oh my God. So that's another thing. So if we're not in Blair, I guess once you're marked by the witch, they say you brought it back with you. So maybe that's why um Kim can go back to that place on the outskirts of Burkittsville and still kind of be controlled by the witch and still think that she's just throwing money in her face when really she's stabbing her with
Uh-huh.
a nail file, I guess, maybe. But this scene with the town or the store
Mhm.
reaction like to them is before they go into Burkittsville. So
Before
what
they go
is
into the
that
woods.
into the woods? Okay,
Right.
so before they go into the woods. So
'Cause
what is that? Like why I all of a sudden I missed this kind of like very authentic feel, like, oh, this is how people would deal with this. And all of a sudden I felt like I was watching something that was like a high structured narrative and a kind of like, like, we don't take
Yeah.
candy to strangers here,
Yeah. It just doesn't. Yeah. Well,
yeah,
the only justification I have for it
yeah,
is that Burkittsville is formerly Blair.
yeah,
The Black Hills Woods is not Burkittsville. The Black Hills Woods are the Black Hills Woods.
uh,
Neighboring that city, the idea is that they took Ellie Kedward into the woods.
right,
He's from Blair.
okay,
But the Black Hills is its own thing. So, and they even make a point when he's saying like, "Hey, you passed the thing." He's like, "Oh yeah, that was in Burkittsville. I don't fucking shop there. I don't even piss there." The shop that they're going to, the sign shows like Black Hills Liquor Store or whatever.
right, right.
So I just, in my head, if that store they're shopping in and the woods themselves are the Black Hills, maybe it's just like Shelbyville versus Springfield. Like you cross those train tracks, and fucking those people in Black Hills are so fucking yokely. Like they made a documentary where they interviewed people from Burkittsville, but had you gone a few miles down that road and gotten to Black Hills, you would have been interviewing very different people.
All right, okay.
That's an answer I have to create for you, but the data is there for me to make that conclusion.
It is.
I'm not grasping at straws.
No, no,
But
no, no,
yes,
no.
you are correct.
Right.
Compared to the, let's be honest, real people they interviewed to set the stage for what Burkittsville is, the actors and characters they are playing in Black Hills are very, very,
yeah. And it might even be more effective. And again, I don't know if this was how much of this would have been within the director's, like grasp within his power. But again, if there would have been some way to kind of like plant the seed when they're in the store the first time,
and they're less cartoony.
Yeah, that they're
Because
just
I
kind
would
of like
get it
people. Yeah.
Once they've been exposed to her, and now you're potentially warped POV.
Yeah.
It's these three hillbilly boys on the porch going like, "Hey, Elvira," and they're all like that. It's the same. It's the lady in the store could have been way more chill the first time they were shopping. And then,
totally. And even like, okay, the fact that like that guy is like underneath
oh yeah,
was it what was it, a refrigerator?
Yeah.
I don't remember. Yeah, it's underneath the refrigerator and everything like that, fixing it. He's in exactly the same spot, I believe.
Yes.
Doing the exact same thing. And it makes it feel, you brought up David Lynch, it makes it feel very kind of like time loopy, like, okay, what kind of like, mad world have I entered? Like, where things are, like a little fakey town where people are, like.
And I'm glad you brought him up, because again, this is one of the things that really pays off if you're like a nerd for this shit. But that actor is the actor who plays Rustin Parr in Curse of the Blair Witch.
Oh wow.
And the fact that when after he murdered the kids, came into town and said, "I'm finished now."
Right.
And then he's down there fixing the fridge. He goes, "I'm finished now."
Oh,
I was like, ah. And then here's the extra shit. He's there when she goes to the counter, but then when she leaves, he's gone completely. And you never see him get up and go. So like, where'd he go?
And that feels very Kubrick The Shining, it's just kind of like there was a chair behind me, and then we cut away, and then we cut back to me. There's no chair behind me. Ha ha ha! I'm crazy hotel man.
Now give me some candy.
Yeah, exactly.
No, but I do have to wonder, like how much of these things are like echoes. Like we're obviously seeing Eileen Treacle,
right?
We're seeing the Burkittsville 7. Like he's not really haunting them so much as he's just like this creepy echo of a thing.
Yeah.
It's there's not much. I don't think it's really saying much. It's just like also. No. Finish your thought. Mine's unrelated.
Just in a strange way, I'd say it's oddly enough like this movie's strengths are also its weaknesses for me, because I feel like its greatest strengths as what it is, not even in its potential, but in what it is that I could recognize here and there as I was taking my notes, is its reward for fandom. Like if you were if you've seen Blair Witch Project, you know, like so many times, and you've seen Curse the Blair Witch even more, and you've got this lore like locked in your head, and you go see Book of Shadows, there are rewards for you. They're not even Easter eggs. They're more kind of like Christmas presents.
Yeah.
That aren't wrapped. And that's really, really cool.
And 19-year-old me was like, fuck yeah.
Right.
And
That
22
said,
and 42-year-old me is still like, fuck yeah.
right. And that said, as someone who, you know, saw the first movie for the first time in 15 years a couple months ago, and saw Curse of the Blair Witch like 15 years ago, and didn't remember all that much about it, and went into this movie just kind of like for this movie, the rewards were limited.
Yeah. I could see
So
that.
yeah. So I that's kind of like my most like all-encompassing comment I think I can make about this movie. Now that like doing this pod has actually helped. Like maybe I will return to it at some point in the future, and maybe there will be more gold to mine. Because again, like because I know certain things are coming, because I know I'm going to enjoy those second act, you know, moments that are going to make me chuckle. Who know, you know, who knows?
I mean, yeah, there's a lot of fun people yelling. Also, we were still in the store as far as you know, my brain in this conversation, but
yeah.
You know, Kim Director being the MVP that she is, when she asked to talk to the manager, and the girl's like, I'm the manager. She's like, oh, well, Peggy, could you tell the bitch at the front desk to do her fucking job?
That was cool.
The bitch. Oh, I fucking love her.
I do too. But even with her, like where she landed, like with the fucking like sheriff telling her, or whichever detective is talking to her, telling her to take the shit off her face, and then she finally is wiping it off and like all emotional, and I'm just kind of like, oh, I don't like this. I'm and I know I'm not supposed to, but come on, movie. Like
cinematically, the cops are too hostile for
way
even
too
if
hostile.
there are dead bodies in this building, like the energy, you know. But
there's
again,
usually a good cop.
But yes, judgmental
in the movies.
Again, and not to, I can't. It's interesting because I saw this movie for so long without having seen, at least at the time, Paradise Lost 1 and 2, because the third one came out a few years, way after Blair Witch. But they're still linked thematically in several ways. And one of them is just the quick to judgmental hostility of an entire community who has just decided these boys are guilty.
Right.
So, and you see it in not just citizens, but people like at the county, like, you know, offices and stuff. Like, so gotcha. Again, I have accepted that, oh yeah, well, I guess, you know, maybe not in as not to sound like an elitist, but maybe not in such bustling metropolitan cities, but maybe in smaller communities.
Maybe
you have police that can, you know, behave that way and get away with it, and you know, it's not that outlandish.
Yeah. Do you have a theory about like those kids outside the store who were harassing Kim on the way in, and then they're
just gone?
But then throwing rocks, I guess, on the road, and then they disappeared.
They left to, I presume, go further down the road so that when she left, we can throw a rock. Let's go get some rocks.
Right.
Or, and then fuck her. Let's get the fuck out of here. Oh, look, there's that van. Let's go throw rocks at it.
But then they vanish like right after that. Like she goes back to check the road, and there's no sign of them. And I'm just like, well, that was fast. Like if you threw rocks at a van and saw it veer off and kind of hit a tree, you wouldn't hang out just to kind of see, like, did she survive?
Oh, really? Because I was thinking like, oh, fuck, let's get out of here before she calls like before the cops get here. Like, we caused that wreck. Let's get the fuck out.
Like, I just
wanted to break her window. I didn't want her to.
Right. Like, I can understand that, but it didn't occur to me while I was watching the movie. I thought it was the Blair Witch fucking with her again.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, well, that's the other thing is, or it could have just been the Blair Witch the whole time. Not the whole time, but like them on the road.
There were no boys.
Well, because you crashed the van. Oh, I just dinged it a little bit. then holy shit, it's wrecked. And then actually,
Right,
holy
right,
shit, it's
right.
not wrecked. But it looked wrecked in order to get you to stay at this fucking place and not leave, you know?
Oh God.
Because that's to me one of the big rug pulls is when you see it not damaged. I'm like,
Right.
oh fuck. But yeah, I've seen, you know, when you mean to like do one thing and then like the entire thing collapses, you go, oh fuck, let's get out of here.
Yeah, yeah. It's
And
just
also,
the
I do respect her for you know, whenever guys you know, harass by offering, you know, their sex, and then, you know, a woman can just call them out on their bullshit, being like, all right, whip it out.
right, right.
All right, fuck you later.
Yeah, didn't think so. Bye.
Yeah, exactly. At least she gave the response, and I'm like, good. Fuck that little 13-year-old boy. Don't actually fuck him, but you know,
I was
fuck
just
him.
gonna say,
Don't fuck him.
he can go to hell. That's what
Yeah,
you.
yeah, that's what I meant. So let's take a side journey for a moment.
Okay.
So one of the things that was interesting about this movie, so you know, I think I got a DVD player, you know, in like summer of '99.
Mhm.
Blair Witch came out there, so you know, the Book of Shadows, you know, I got on DVD within a year and a half. You know, it was bonus features were a fun, exciting new thing, and apparently this is on the VHS too, which I didn't have. But they did this other thing, and I can't do this podcast without talking about the Secrets of Esrever, which was this bonus feature where they show a deleted scene or two where there was like in camera stuff that like changed. Like so when Tristan is running around the bed and
Yeah.
talking about, you know, the kids, and they put their hands on her when she was bleeding and blah blah blah. Where there's some lockers in the background, and when she passes by them, the locks are now in the shape of a pentagram, and when she passes by them again, they're not. And the whole point of this bonus feature is that things aren't what they seem with the magic of Esrever, which very quickly I went, that's just reverse backwards. Okay, reverse. Got it. And then they say and as you're watching this, like it's like a 5-minute bonus feature. At the bottom corner of the screen, there's always like a letter that keeps changing.
Mhm.
At the end of the video, it says rewind the video and write down the letters, and it'll give you like this message.
Oh my goodness.
And then you can watch the movie again
Yeah.
with the Secrets of Esrever. So this movie did a thing that, as far as I know, hasn't really been done except for, and this is a theatrical release, that stupid shit ass The Exorcist, the version you haven't seen, which is like, hey, look, we superimposed Pazuzu onto the oven. Look, this dumb spook house bullshit. Where, and here was my nitpick about is that for the longest time you couldn't get Blair Witch or Book of Shadows in its theatrical presentation, because when you got it on DVD or VHS, the movie has been manipulated, but in really subtle ways, not as drastic as. So one of the things that I like about it being on streaming, like they just somewhat recently took it off HBO Max, like a million things got taken off HBO Max.
Yeah.
But even the version that's available on Tubi is the theatrical version, which is great because I've, you know, for 15, 16, 17 years, I've had the DVD, but I'm like, can I just watch it without all this bullshit put in? But it's really subtle shit. You know, like when Tristan goes into the lake, a little stick man is kind of like the shadow of a stick man is floating in the water.
Huh.
And there's a lot of stick men. There's a few of like the poster of Jeffrey Donovan's face. Like when he blows out smoke, you see his face in the smoke for a second.
Okay.
But there's words, and I remember. So Kim's laying on the grave, and it's Eileen Treacle's grave, and you cut to the four of them looking at her, and the tombstone says Treacle, and you cut back to Kim, and now when you cut back to them, it says further, and then I cut back to Kim, and when you cut back to them, it says Treacle again, and I remember going, all right, I watched this video, and I'm supposed to be looking for clues or whatever, and it says the word further. What does further mean? All I got was, this is like some fucking, this isn't real. Like, this isn't part of the narrative, right? This is just some bonus feature. This is Little Orphan Annie needs my fucking help, right? This is a Christmas story. This is bullshit. But whatever. You put a bunch of things in there. But the one thing I never did was actually write down the letters. I just sort of watched the movie again and noticed a bunch of goofy shit. and I noticed a few words.
Yeah.
However, if you actually wrote the letters down, it said like door, water, rug, like fire or something. So those are the things you're supposed to look for, and in those specific ones, words appear. So
Huh.
like when Erica is in her little room, uh, the rug says the word "or" in its designs.
Yeah.
The word "seek" comes out of the fire for like half a second. Further is on the tombstone.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, the words in the order is "seek me." It's further me or seek no. And if you rearrange them, it says "seek me no further" or. And that's cryptic because or what?
Mm.
Now, here's where it gets kind of fun. And I go, oh, maybe it wasn't as bullshitty and Little Orphan Annie and Drink Your Ovaltine as I thought. Because after the last of those superimposed gags, they don't do any more. And in the last 15 minutes of the movie, that's when Tristan comes down and out of nowhere starts speaking backwards.
Oh.
And she's like, Earth, Claw, Niega, Liu, Nerdlick, Ape, which those are the words she's saying,
Yeah.
which is
The
the children will again walk free.
right.
So the full sentence is seek me no further, or the
Or the
children will
children will
again walk
again walk
free.
free.
And I went, huh, that's neat. Doesn't really affect anything in the outcome of the movie,
No.
but that's neat. As if to say, stop fucking around in my woods.
Yeah.
You came here, you're looking, just get the fuck out, or I can remember those little kids banging on the tent.
Yeah.
They won't just be like in the street in front of your van for a second. Get out.
Yeah.
It's an extra layer. I guess it's neat, but I mean, they tried so hard with the Secrets of Esrever and the real Jeffrey Patterson, and like, shut the fuck up. You know, he wanted to make a movie that was, you know, a response to people who were taking the movie too seriously, and the dangers of blurring, you know, fiction and reality, and whether you want to believe shit and how dangerous that can be. Because it really did bother him as a documentarian. Not that they made a fake documentary.
Yeah.
He's all for that. But he's like, there is a danger to selling it to people as real.
Mm.
And I remember seeing this survey. I forget where I read it. Was it Entertainment Week? I don't know. But like 40% of the people after the movie came out thought it was real.
Yeah.
Enough to like go to the town and buy dirt and all that shit.
Yeah.
So there is, I mean, the movie to me thematically spinning a lot of plates, and I have to wonder if you know, if maybe I don't want to say bit off more than you can chew, but I would wonder what Joe Berlinger would do now,
Mm-hmm.
because he's kind of making a commentary on people who consume too much media, but
Right.
also how much you believe versus uh there's a lot.
Yeah, no, there
but but
is.
but you know, one thing that I don't think enough people, it's an interesting subject that people don't make enough media out of, is
Uh-huh.
group delusion,
Yeah.
which I've always found fascinating. There was an article I read a long time ago, and I don't want to say in defense of this movie, but in talking about this movie, he brings it up, and I go, "Thank you." But and I wrote it down here. It was in McMinnville, Tennessee. Do you ever hear the story of? It's kind of a somewhat infamous story about.
No.
It was at a school, and like a teacher thought they smelled a gas, and
No.
they told people, "I'm smelling gas. Oh my god, we're getting nauseous. We're all getting sick." And then all these kids got sick. They all thought they smelled the gas, and then the agencies came, and even though people were like puking from it, they're like doing tests, and they're like, "There's no gas here." The power of
Suggestion.
believing.
Yeah.
And when you have that fight with Tristan and Steven, and her even saying like, "But if you believe in something, doesn't that make it real?" and the
Mm-mm.
dangers of not just mass hysteria, but when you apply that to media. And I'm just saying that some of the things that this movie are positing
Mm-hmm.
are interesting and ambitious in that way. That isn't this more ambitious than just doing another Blair Witch and just trying to scare me again and cranking out the same shit again? Uh, you know, it doesn't scare me that much, and
Mm-hmm.
some of the things that they swing for don't always connect.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll say it again. I really like chewing on this idea of how much of what they experienced was the witch, or if it wasn't the witch, what kind of group psychosis did you goobs
Mm.
who went into the woods and are willing to go on this journey where you blacked out to the point where you don't even recall murdering people because you're going on this ride.
Right, right, right.
Um, and that's and since that's kind of one of the underlying themes of the movie, that's why I don't totally jive with that one person's thing about no, she fucked with the video at the end, not with their
Mm.
minds the whole time. Because if she fucked with the video, that means she's faking the girl at the liquor store getting killed.
Or no,
And then the
yeah,
police are showing this video, and then she's clearly like, "Hi, no, I still work here." No, the girl at the liquor store got fucking killed,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
and you know,
Because otherwise, why would she be? Why would Kim be interrogated? Because the only reason they would be
correct,
interrogating her is if they also believed that she was killed. And what would the Blair Witch have to gain from fooling all of them that
right?
somebody is dead
No,
when they are not? I don't.
the original
Yeah,
intention was to be kind of ambiguous about. Also, this is the big thing. So when you have the original cut of the movie,
yeah.
the other camp group shows up,
Mm-hmm.
they leave,
Yeah.
and that's all we know is they leave. And then Sheriff Craven's like, "Hey, there's a crime scene out here,"
Yeah.
but you're left to wonder, did they even commit a crime or not?
Oh.
Then the theatrical version shows them leaving and murdering them, and you're like, okay, they committed a crime.
Mm-hmm.
And now that we know that there's these other crimes, we have to wonder, well, if they committed that one, they committed these. So the secondary question now becomes the primary question, which is, why did they do it?
Right, right, right,
But I like the idea of the first movie going, or did they even at all?
right.
Because when they watch the footage, the final footage that's reversed in Jeff's loft, it's just of them doing satanic witchy shit and then leaving with weapons.
Uh-huh.
But like in a court of law, that's still not footage of them murdering anyone.
Right, right,
It's
right.
just of them
Circumstantial, yeah.
leaving with weapons. And the movie just ruins all that ambiguity by showing them arrive. And I have a little nitpick about it. It's a dumb nitpick, but okay. By showing them arrive and kill them,
Yeah.
when we see in the loft, there's like a quick flash of the Coffin Rock formation,
Yeah.
and Stephen Newman goes, "Coffin Rock, what?" It's like, yeah, it looked like Coffin Rock. And then later, the police throw down the photo, and it's the same image. They're fully clothed, those 5 campers, but we see them. You're supposed to be disemboweled, but you see them, one, get beaten with the rock, but two, you see one guy get like tied to a tree. He's shirtless, and like Kim pulls his pants down. And it's implied that she like chops his dick off. She swings down. To me, I don't know. I'm not a murderer, but feel once I've taken someone's pants and shirt off, that's like the crime, right? And then maybe we put them in a pentagram, but they're clothed, which again, the stuff that you shot was shot afterwards. It was never meant to be part
Yeah.
of the movie.
Right.
So now I have to retcon visually that you chopped this dude's dick off and then pulled his pants back up and buttoned them and then put his shirt on to lay them all in a pentagram. And I'm like,
Yeah.
this is nonsense.
Yeah.
Ooh, also, by the way, another fun thing about time, if you want to go that route, is that uh, when he looks at the TV, it's the image of Coffin Rock, but it's the same image as the photograph that he doesn't see until later in the police station. So I also like this idea that time is still being funky. Also because she finds these files and she's like, what the fuck are these? But then we see that those are from the police station.
Yeah.
So again, it's something from the future making its presence in the now.
Again, is that what that was?
So again, if you want to play with the idea that the Blair Witch can fuck with time a little bit, she's literally fucking with time. She's bringing in like objects.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
It's fun shit. I like it. Anyway, you said you had another question.
No, you've already kind of answered. I mean, you can answer it if there's something beyond what you've already shared, but it was just basically because this isn't your first time or even your second or third time seeing the movie. I don't know how often you watch it, but is there something that you got at this most recent screening that resonated with you more strongly than ever?
But it was kind of bad.
Well, what?
Well, first of all, I saw this movie like all through I used to watch this movie a lot. And I used to love it, love it, love it. And then 2 times ago, I watched it and was like, is this movie starting to like lose its luster with me?
Oh boy.
But then I watched it again after that, maybe about a year ago, and was like, no, this is still good. Maybe I was just sometimes we're just in moods.
Yeah.
It's just not the right movie at the right time. And I was really happy when I watched it last year that I'm like, no, we're still good. No, but I remember thinking about it briefly last time, and it really hit me this time. It's just something that I don't think fully adds up. And I do feel like it, I get hints of Black Christmas where we have a situation where we have a pregnant girl and she doesn't want to keep it and the man does want to keep it. At least he's not being a cock about it the way Keir Dullea is in Black Christmas.
Right.
But this is the first time in all my viewings of it where I'm watching her drink at the campsite. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? Stop. You're a bad person.
I totally didn't even.
I didn't for like the 30 other times I watched this movie. and then I'm not justifying it, but I'm like, oh, but you don't want it, so maybe you don't care. But what if you decide to keep it? You're fucking with its brain development right now.
Right.
And then what kills me even more so is that like later in the scene, Steven's like, hey, don't you think you've had like, could you cool it? And I'm like, if you want this baby, you should be like smacking those bottles out of her hand. You don't care enough either. One could argue that maybe he doesn't know she's pregnant, but they've already established that he wants to have it and she doesn't. And when she's bleeding and smearing her own blood on her, he's like, oh my God, the baby. So he knows.
Yeah.
These are just 2 reckless people who should not even be having this conversation about having a kid. That kid dodged a bullet. Especially if he yells at her about take the fucking pills.
Yeah. Oh boy. Yeah.
He is. So yeah, that tainted. And they're my 2 least favorite in the movie anyway.
Yeah, I get that. Although,
some of it's not always their fault.
Yeah.
Some of it is, I just think more than anyone, they're a little more on the nose about their expository explanations of who they are and what they think. And he, it's, I mean, you and I have both, we've had our fair share of acting parts, and it's, you can give so many different performances from take to take, and then you're not in control anymore, and sometimes the editor will make these choices where performance in this scene doesn't necessarily match maybe what you're as a through line. And I find Steven as a character to be inconsistent.
Yeah.
From scene to scene in a way that I don't with some of the other characters.
And it's beyond disorienting. It's not like ooh, the Blair Witch is playing with his
no.
I have no idea who that man is.
Correct. And every time I go, oh, I like that about him, then it goes away, or I don't like about them and it changes. Like, I mean, in a weird way, I kind of appreciate how these strangers very quickly become a unit. I just don't totally buy it. For example, it's a nice beat. I still just don't believe the honesty of it. When the five campers leave, and he makes this joke about, they disappeared and their footage was never found, except it was found underdeveloped. He's like, oh yeah, Jeff's worrying about whether they're going to come back. And then Steven's like, well, we're going to have to stay up. And he jumps on his back. We're going to stay up all night. And I'm like,
Yeah, right. No.
you just met this dude a few hours ago. But I also
Right.
like you're all getting shit faced and having a good time.
Sure.
And
I mean,
you ever meet someone who's just got that nice to meet you energy, and you can kind of go with them on that, and you sort of drive with them that night, and it's nice.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I've met people who are friendly that can pull me into their stratosphere, but then later there's manners and politeness that don't match that. Like when Jeff offers him his bedroom, and he's like, "Oh, thank you, brother." Like,
Right.
uh, now you're so cordial. Maybe it's because you're not drunk. I don't know, but
I don't, yeah, I don't know
yeah,
either. um, I think Jeff and Kim are the characters that I enjoy watching the most, because I don't have an Erica thing like you do. And I mean, she's fine. I don't think
interesting.
she's bad, but
I
it's
don't
not her
care for
fault.
her character so much, but
Yeah, I don't care
I
for the
do
character.
like her performance as that foolish, when she lays down and she's so performative, the way she's talking in the grass, and when she's like, you see her like ask permission to take the little leaf, and she takes it. I'm like, you're so full of
Mm-hmm.
shit, but I believe you
Yeah.
as that full of shit person.
Yeah, and maybe that's part of the problem too. It's just kind of like, oh, just I know who you are. Like I've stood behind you at the health food store, like
Yeah.
um
If
yeah.
anything, the one that it's the one I've always never fully got a grasp on is Tristan, because half the movie she's in a delirious state or a bewitched state. But in that
Yeah.
beginning, there's something that I like about her, and then it goes away, which is this. I don't want to call it like a G golly earnestness,
Mhm.
but like when Erica corrects her at the Burkittsville site, not Burkittsville,
Mhm.
at the Rustin Parr site,
Mhm.
and she thinks that they could be negative witch things. She goes, actually, some of these are positive, and you shouldn't, fear can lead to this, anger leads to hate leads to suffering, whatever the fuck. But like when they cut to Tristan, instead of feeling condescended, she like smiles and feels like she learned something. And I'm like, oh, look at you. And there's a few moments in that first 20-30 minutes where she's presented with stuff and she kind of is like, oh, neat, you're a Wiccan, huh? Or when Erica talks about wanting to commune with Ellie, and she goes, oh, you ever seen a photo of her? She's like, well, photos don't exist. Oh no, it totally does. Like I found it in the thing. Like there is an excitability to her that I wanted
Okay.
to get to know more, and then it all kind of goes away. Maybe that's the point, is that it all goes away. Because that's to me, when you're talking about, having these dreams, and that poor girl, because I feel like these dreams you're having where you are Ellie is like this horrible side effect of being consumed by Ellie, but you don't know it yet. So like what you're stuck with is these memories of like kids dipping their hands in the blood, but like
Mhm.
that's a lot of work. That's a lot of work. And I don't necessarily envy her for some of that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I don't even I agree. I don't even know what to say. I'm slowly fading. I'm sorry.
Sure. Well, I will wrap up. I mean, you know how I feel about the movie, but also side note, the soundtrack slaps.
Yeah, I mean, as much as okay, I will
Well, the
say,
song choices slap.
yeah. I will say, except for the thing about the opening credits, in addition to like the problem I have with just like the singer,
Uh-huh.
um, is it was one of those cases where I think there were two examples, because I used to follow Marilyn Manson's career quite closely,
Yes, you
and
did.
I think there are only two examples of cinematic use of his music, and not including like Resident Evil. Oh, you know what, I just thought of three, but not including Resident Evil, where he wrote, literally wrote the score, but that I'm kind of like, yeah, thumbs up all the way, because I thought about like Rock is Dead for Matrix, and I remember even interviews with him at the time talking about how he didn't want to just have his music like used by a movie just because it might be cool, but then was either he would either saw the movie or read the script or something, and he was just kind of like, oh yeah, there's a lot of themes in Rock is Dead that are, like in the Matrix. And I was like, what, really? Like what? Because
Well,
I
you
know
have
Rock
to
is
say
Dead
that.
like by heart, but
I mean,
so, and then this was another case of it where I'm just kind of like, disposable teens. I guess in the title alone, like, because you're singing about disposable teens, if we're assuming these people are teens, which I'm not really.
yeah, they're not.
um,
I think, you had an album coming out in the next month or two.
yeah.
Although I understand, I think I understand why he allowed it to be in the movie, and it's just that from what I remember, he saw the Paradise Lost documentary and liked it. So
Ah.
so Joe Berlinger's asking for a song, like, or even if Artisan's asking for it, he goes, "Oh well, I like that director's other movies."
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
So here, use a song that doesn't fit the story or the or the
but
themes or
that's yeah,
anything.
but I blame that all on Artisan.
Sure, there's that too. But
Yeah.
no, and I just thought like, okay, the only like kind of examples I can think of songs where that are affiliated with, even if they're not, I mean, I guess they were all used in the movie. Were Apple of Sodom in
Hmm.
Lost Highway, and Tainted Love cover for Not Another Teen Movie. And the other one that I just thought of, I don't even remember the name of it right now. Was it, I don't remember which one they used, but whichever song they used for the first John Wick movie,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
badass. Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, it's unfortunate I can't really feel that with my whole,
yeah. I,
being.
I like that you left Hatchet out because I found
No.
that distracting. Yeah,
Yes. No, not at all.
literally the rhythm of
Uh,
the opening credits are like to the song, and it's
oh
like,
dear God. I mean, it's
yeah.
no, it's okay. Also, it doesn't pay off in the movie for me. But
No, it doesn't.
I'd sooner watch this than Hatchet again, I think.
Yay!
That's
That's
saying
good.
something.
I mean, and hopefully, I'll always sooner watch this than the third Blair Witch.
I want to give it another shot because
Oh,
I think
I
I've
will.
seen it twice. I saw it once in the theater, and then I saw it again because people were going ape shit over it. There are people who like that movie, like
I've
really
never
like
met one
it.
of them,
No, but I've
but
heard them on podcasts, and like we're in an age of fandom where people can like
sure.
put things in their stories and go like, love this film, and I'm just like, really? And that's one that I've seen people, particularly people younger than me, go kind of like really, really gung ho about.
Huh.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, the thing about this movie is that I have never met anyone who really likes it the way I do.
yeah,
But I know they exist because of the internet.
yeah,
In the last 20 some odd years, I'm not alone from knowing that there are people who not only love it, but just also go, look, guys, it's not that bad. Like, and it's actually kind of good. And here's why. And give it another shot. It's pretty
yeah.
good. So but I saw it the second time I saw it with a friend of mine who hated Blair Witch Project. And she dug it. And my buddy who I saw it the first time with was like, "You fucking like he understood like I like it, and there's no helping me." But he's
Sure.
like, "You liked it?" She's like, "Yeah, because like it was a fucking movie, like it was about something." And that first movie was
Oh my God.
she thought people lost in the woods for 90 minutes, like she was just not jiving with us. But this is, so at least I had one friend I could talk about it with for like a couple of years, and then
Yeah.
I don't know anyone really. I'm so alone.
Well, maybe you'll find somebody else, like in the comments or something.
I can't end this without talking at least about the commentary, which I don't always go, you gotta listen to the commentary.
Hmm.
But the commentary is and I haven't listened to it in like 18 years or so, but
Yeah.
it was interesting to hear his point of view and his intentions because I carry them with me. Like this is a movie that I don't just watch on its own terms. I watch it with a meta narrative of director's intentions. And one of the little sentences that always stuck with me was that because the crime that is committed in Paradise Lost is
Mhm.
fucking sickening. So when Artisan kind of comes to him saying like, "Oh well, we want why isn't it going to be just a documentary?" And like the fact that he said something to the effect of like, well, I already made like a real documentary about like evil in the woods. So like I'm not interested in making like a fake one.
Yeah.
And I go, okay, all right.
Yeah.
The one is a real tragedy, and a real will make you upset,
Yeah.
not just because of the crime, but also the the greater crime of what this community does to these three boys. Um, but like, so I don't want to link them because one is real and true and tragic and disgusting, but there is undeniably from the voice of the director a link between these two movies and like a kind of a culture that is depicted and
Yeah.
certain themes of judgment. And then also I would just highly recommend it. Anyway, that commentary is really, really interesting. I won't
Nice.
go into any of the details here, but there's a lot of thought that went into the filming of this movie and its
Mm.
use in three kind of different acts. The way the lighting shifts, uh, the way the camera is used in Act One and Act Two, and as things escalate, the way things become kind of more kooky and cinematic. Like, there's some really interesting choices. It's really worth a listen if you dig on this movie and you've never listened to it.
Mm.
Um, and also one of the I wish more movies did this. Like Edward Scissorhands, I think has this where there's like a select commentary by Danny Elfman.
Oh yeah.
They do Carter Burwell does soundtrack for this, and it's I think this is the first time I ever recognized Carter Burwell's name.
Mm.
And sure he worked prior to this, but I mean, I feel like his career just sort of exploded in all through the 2000s, 2010s.
Uh-huh.
Most people know his name because he did like almost every goddamn Coen Brothers movie.
Right.
But endlessly fascinated by the score for this movie because he did a really, at least to me, kind of neat, nifty thing, which is he went out to the woods and like actually sourced sticks breaking and recorded river and like beat rocks and like manipulated it so like the sonic sounds you're hearing are
Mm.
of the woods.
Mm.
And I just eat that kind of shit up. I'm an easy mark.
Mm.
I sit back in my couch and watch the movie and go, ah, yes. Do you hear this? Like the oh, it's so good.
Nice. Well,
Anyway,
yeah, no, I can appreciate that too. Like, and again, like, because I will probably return to this now.
yay.
Not anytime soon, but in a
But
couple
someday,
years, yeah, in a couple years, sure.
yeah. I,
And I can go in with, like that kind of like mentality. And maybe, I don't know, maybe even find a DVD and rent it or buy it secondhand and
yeah.
watch it with the commentaries because I want to get back into that stuff too. I miss the aspects of physical media that I buy Blu-rays that I watch the movies, but the special features go unwatched, the commentaries go unwatched, and it's like that
Dude,
used to be the thing, and I don't know what's changed.
I did the same thing. I used to buy movies and not even watch the fucking movie. I would just consume the bonus features.
Right,
And now and
regularly.
I don't know what shifted in me, but I'm like, well, no, I just want to watch the movie now. Like, I don't give a fuck about. I mean, it has to be. Problem is, half the time it's just EPK talking heads talking about how great the director was and how nice the cast was.
Right.
Versus Scream Factory getting everyone together and sitting down and talking about it, or like a very
Mm,
specific producer chronicling, you know.
yeah.
But yeah, before we go, I should show off my 22-year-old Medicom
Oh my God.
of Erica and Tristan and Jeff and
Oh
Kim.
God.
And I don't know if you guys can see it, but like his little beanie says Blair Witch Hunt on it. Here's how much I like this movie. They made another Kubrick set of Heather and Mike and why am I always forgetting his name?
Oh, the Josh.
Josh. It was the three of them and a big stick man. And I opted
Yeah.
to buy this one and
Uh-huh.
not that one.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I couldn't have done that.
I also I and I don't have it with me, but I used to collect the Johnny Lightning diecast cars.
Mm-hmm.
The DeLorean and all this shit from movies, but
Yeah, yeah.
they made the Blair Witch Hunt van
Oh God.
and I have it
Somewhere.
somewhere. It's in a I eventually put it's in my box with my Johnny Lightning Simpsons cars and
Right. Oh my
Yeah.
God, that is so funny. All right,
Yeah.
Mr. Merchandise.
Merchandising. So we'll be back at some point in
Yeah.
the new year.
Woohoo!
First episode of the new year will be fucking Blair Witch.
I
Who
mean,
knows? Maybe I'll like it more the second time.
yeah, maybe. I don't know. Anything's possible, I suppose. Well, only one way to find out. So come back, folks.
Yeah. Until next time.